Okay.
Okay, well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Planning Advisory Committee meeting for February 3rd. I will look for a mover and a seconder to open the meeting. Moved by Mayor Paquette, seconded by Member Zablinski. That the meeting be opened at 6 p.m. All in favor? That's carried. For the adoption of the agenda, I'll look for a mover and a seconder. Moved by Member Zablinski, seconded by Member Langlois. That the agenda presented to the Planning Advisory Committee dated February 3rd, 2026 be adopted as prepared, unless anybody has any to add or you're good. All in favor? That is carried. Adoption of previous minutes. We're over in your seconder. Moved by thank you, Member Paquette. Moved by Member Zablinski. The minutes of the Planning Advisory Committee meeting dated December 2nd, 2025 be adopted as circulated. All in favor? Okay. Any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. Moving right along. I don't believe we have any presentations for delegations this evening.
No.
We will move right into applications. So we have application reference B1 2026 long year.
Yeah.
We'll ask the planning administrator to walk us through, give us a high level overview.
Sure. This is an application for consent to create one new lot on lands that are legally described as concession 6, part lot 20 P 36R 9822 part 2 parcel 28465 NIP, otherwise known as 630 Development Road. And the current owner of that property is Keith Longmire. So the property is proposed to be severed to comprise a 5-acre, 2.02 hectare parcel of land to the north and east of the land holding, so fronting onto Development Road, which currently contains no buildings or structures. And the retained property, which is proposed to comprise 20.2 acres or 8.19 hectares of land, would include the existing single-family dwelling, a small shed, an on-site sewage system, a well, and entrance driveway. And the majority of the property, as it is for a lot of properties in that location, is covered in dense vegetation, and the proposed size and configuration of the new proposed lots fronting onto Development Road were shown in the planning report and on the notice that was circulated to the public. So the frontage of the proposed severed lot would have 67.06 meters, so that exceeds the minimum 60 meters that we require for a new lot. It would have a depth of 301 meters. The retained lot would also have the frontage of 67 meters thereabouts, so it's divided equally the frontage, and it would have a depth of 770 meters. So it kind of goes back and then loops around the other piece. And that would have a larger piece area of, say, 20 acres or so. So although the applicant could potentially accommodate alternate uses, the most likely and suitable use for the proposed severed lot, given the largely residential context, is a residential use. And as it is beyond a certain size, there's potential for both a single family dwelling plus a detached and or detached ADU, depending on the current owner or the purchaser's preference. So did an evaluation of the planning policies like usual. We have the provincial planning statement. There's policies there that relate to housing, rural areas, rural lands. All seems to be consistent with those policies. So one in regards to sewage, water and stormwater. So again, just looking at my notes here, the applicant will be encouraged to maintain the existing tree canopy surrounding the proposed single family dwelling and incorporate low impact development measures in the layout to reduce the effects of any to increase infiltration, reduce the effects of any surface water runoff. And that might be something that becomes kind of a recurring recommendation moving forward. Just good stewardship, good management of the work. And then there's natural assets, there's wise use and management of resources. So the interactive map doesn't indicate that there's anything in the bottom of sand and gravel deposits or any other form of constraint that would prevent development occurring. In terms of water, comments on the North Bay Mattawa Conservation Authority are provided later in the report, and I can loop back to that. Agriculture wise, did not reveal the presence of any barns within 500 meters of either the proposed, retained or severed lands. So MDS calculations were not considered necessary on this occasion. And then we look at the official plan and zoning bylaw. So again, I could go over them in detail, but it's, I would say, to summarize, is compliant, consistent with the policies that we have on board, which includes a range of factors from the minimum distance separation formula to protecting natural heritage. Transportation wise, development roads, road municipally year-round, municipally owned and maintained road. A driveway entrance permit would be required to service any proposed new lot, subject to approval here. Yeah, so the notice was circulated to people as a standard process on the 7th of January. Comments were requested to be received by 26th of January. No comments were received whatsoever from the public. Just the same really in regards to stakeholders. The Conservation Authority had no objections to the proposal. I'd say it's quite a straightforward application, this one. So yes, unless there's any questions, or
And I recognize that I think I should have read the declaration of the public hearing. So I will backtrack just a little bit. I'll do that because I see it's for both applications before us tonight. And then we'll jump into questions. So take notice that the Planning Advisory Committee on behalf of the Council for the Corporation of the Township of Bonneville is holding a public meeting tonight, February 3rd, 2026, to consider two applications for proposed consent under section 53 of the Planning Act. The proposed consent applications are B1 2026 Longmere, application for consent to create one new lot on lands legally described as concession 6, part lot 20, RP 36R 9822, part 2, parcel 28465 NIP, or known as 630 Development Road, current owner Longmere Keith, and application B2 2026 Landry, application for consent, proposed severance to create two new lots on lands legally described as Bodfield Concession 6, E Part Lot 6, and RP 36R 9510, Part 1, Parcel 532. If any person or public body that files an application of a decision for the Township of Bonneville in respect of either proposed consent application does not make an oral submission at this public meeting or has made a written submission to the Township of Bonneville before the proposed consent application is determined, the Ontario Land Tribunal may dismiss all or part of the appeal. Has a person or public body made a written submission on behalf of the Township of Bonneville, submission to the Township of Bonneville in respect to B1 2026 or B2 2026?
yeah,
So B2 2026, there's comment?
no comments.
No comments either. Okay. Any person that is attending the public meeting, it doesn't look like there's shall be afforded an opportunity to make an oral representation in respect to the consent applications hereby presented. Does any person attending wish to make a presentation? Hearing none. So I think this concludes the yeah, since there's nobody here to make a presentation and there is no so there we are.
The only thing is just as of course property as well and septic is contained within the retained lands.
It would be.
Yeah.
Any other questions on
I believe
B?
it's about 20 meters off either side, so it's more than sufficient room.
Any questions for B1 2026? No. Perhaps we can
It's what, sorry?
Wasn't in the meeting.
Yeah. So
I think Simon referred to everything possible.
yeah.
well, some of them are quite standard now, but you know.
Okay, so we'll look to call the motion for B1 2026. I'll look for a mover and a seconder. Member Glenski, member Papiak. That the Planning Advisory Committee recommends to council that consent application reference B1 2026 Longmere, which proposes a severance to create one new lot on lands legally described as concession 6 part lot 20 RP 36R9822, part 2, parcel 28465 NIP, also known as 630 Development Road, be approved with conditions as set out. Any questions or comments? All in favor? That's great. We'll move to B2 2026. Would you like to walk us through that?
Yeah. So B2 2026 is an application again for consent for proposed severance to create two new lots on lands legally described as Bonfield Plan 6, East Part Lot 6, and RP 36R 9510, Part 1, Parcel 532. So in terms of the property itself, it would create two new lots. So the two new severed lots are proposed to comprise a 3.7 acre or 1.5 hectare parcel and an 8.4 acre or 3.4 hectare parcel, both vacant land. Whereas the proposed retained lot would comprise a 68.4 acre or 27.7 hectare parcel of vacant land, a larger piece of the remainder to the south of the landholding. So the subject property is designated within the official plan as falling within the rural area. It is zoned rural for planning purposes. The property currently comprises a mix of open terrain, treed areas, and other low-rise vegetation. A section of land which applies to the front portion of the proposed 7 Lot 2 was recently identified within the North Bay Matter Conservation Authority's updated approximate regulated area flood risk mapping as being potentially susceptible to localized flooding. So if you recall from these approximate regulated areas, that often that's done as a desktop exercise. They'll look at the topography, they'll look at the aerials, they'll kind of get a sense of it. They haven't been on site, as I understand, to actually look at that. And the best time to go is the spring or summer when you can actually see how the water flows. Any development taking place in that, whether it's the access driveway or so forth, would require a Section 28 permit on behalf of the Conservation Authority, and we don't have authority over that. So 2 additional areas within the proposed retained lot are located to the northwest and southeast of the proposed retained lot. Are also identified as being susceptible to localized flooding. But again, these are small pools of land and there's a much wider land holding and it wouldn't impact an access to the retained lot. So there'd be no impact on that development there. So the proposed 7 Lot 1 would have a frontage of approximately 60.96 meters. So again, over the minimum 60 meter frontage, an approximate depth of 250 meters. The second severed lot would have an approximate frontage of 137 meters and approximately 250 meter depth. Now, because the way that land holding in severed lot 2 is configured, that would never propose condition that would never be severed again. And then the combined frontage of South Shore Road, that has 400, I say combined frontage because it's the parcel that's already kind of in that, so it wraps around, so it's the combined frontage of the 2 bits that are but South Shore Road is 424 meters, and the depth, because you're going sidewards across the concession, would be 375 meters. So again, although the applicant could potentially accommodate alternate uses appropriate for the rural zone, the most likely and the most suitable use for these properties is considered to be residential. And in this context, the Township of Bonfield did pass the bylaw, which would potentially, subject to an evaluation of on-site sewage systems and wells and siting aspects, could potentially accommodate a single family dwelling plus an attached and or detached ADU, which would contribute to the township's housing supply. And just to clarify, those would never be severable, they would all be on the same landholding. So in all circumstances, the final form, layout and use of the property will be subject to review and regulatory approval on behalf of the North Bay Matter Conservation Authority and the Township of Bonfield's chief building official. And specific consideration will need to be given for development potential of 7 Lot 2. And I say that because the rear portion of the lot is what seems to be the most developable, given that floodway, if you like, towards the entrance of the property. So it would be up to somebody to basically construct a driveway to the rear lot, so there'd be an additional build cost there, but maybe that's what somebody desires, right? To be set back a little bit further and have that extra privacy, so it's a free market and people would choose to purchase that property on that basis. So looking at the policies as they apply, you have the provincial planning statement as noted, so it covers matters of housing, rural areas. Again, all seems consistent. The sewage, water and stormwater, we'll come back to the conservation authorities shortly, but they're the authority on that matter. In terms of like natural assets, there was no other than the kind of water hydrology aspect, which does need that kind to be reviewed in terms of site planning. There's no other, say, development constraints or issues that could prevent development of sand and gravel resource areas. In terms of agriculture, a desktop review did reveal the presence of one former barn-like structure within 500 meters of the subject property, located at 131 Development Road. So that's the northeast of the severed lot 2 as it fronts onto Development Road. But further consultation with the applicant and the property owner itself revealed that it's not and has not for such a long time, apparently, being used for livestock purposes. It's just a relic of a structure that is essentially an oversized shed that is used for storage purposes. And the property itself is not actively being farmed, and there's no plans to farm that property or have livestock on it. So there's a sketch in the report that kind of shows the location of that, and there are several dwellings between that and the where this severance is being proposed. So looking at the Township of Bonfield's official plan, again, lots of policies in here. Some were not going to be applied, like we didn't do the MDS calculations because it would not deemed necessary on this occasion. The natural health heritage features and cultural heritage policies do not really kind of apply here, but given the potential for some water bodies on the property, we feel it's important that some ecological best management practices are followed, and again, this can be integrated as part of the proposed layout and design of the property. There's no existing wetlands or any form of sensitive habitat understood to be on this property, so it wasn't deemed that any further studies were required there. Again, it's on Development Road, which is a year-round municipal owned and maintained road. It's in relative close proximity to the hamlet of Bonfield, where people can access services or just connect to Highway 531 to get back out to wherever they need to go. So there were no comments from a member of the public did call just to ask questions, clarification around the application to receive the notice, but she didn't have any objections whatsoever, and didn't put anything in writing and hasn't shown up to present verbal either, so that doesn't count. Hydro One did not reply. Nothing from the Ministry of Transport confirmed it's not within their purview because it's not near Ministry maintained roads. The main one was North Bay Matter Conservation Authority, which, as I say, they provided the approximate regulatory area mapping. So that shows the extent of what they believe could be an area that's susceptible to localized flooding on the property. And just to clarify, we don't believe this relates in any way to a tributary, or it's more just the way that the topography flows, and this is where water, because it likes to go downhill, this is where water would inevitably pool. So that said, the MBMCA stated there appears to be 2 suitable locations within which to accommodate a sewage system on all 3 lots, including the 2 proposed severed lots and the retained lot. As such, the township is of the opinion that such matters can satisfactorily be addressed through condition and or the preparation of property surveys, which is a standard condition of consent. So the response from the MBMCA also noted the subject lands are partially located within an area of highly vulnerable aquifers. This is a matter that's kind of being brought forward Also in relation to comments on our official plan, which we may delve into in a bit. But it's not material in this circumstance, it wouldn't really prevent or impact development taking place. So yeah, the consent application is to sever that to create 2 new lots for the retained portion. Conservation Authority didn't raise any concerns. Any development that impacted the approximate regulated area would require a section 28 permit. And other than that, the recommendation is for approval.
Questions, comments, yeah?
Has there been further severances?
There was, yeah, but it was in previous plan periods, going back a long time ago.
Okay, so it's doesn't affect this severance.
That's right.
And so their municipal address is development 630, I think, if I remember correctly, whatever it is, it's on development. This is now essentially taking away their access to development. How does that work from a municipal address perspective?
So it's the other property that the first application.
They retain,
Neither the retained nor the severed on this has a municipal address, it's just all vacant land.
No, that's a good question. On the fire department.
Yeah.
When you say there's no report from them,
Yeah,
what would be their objection, or what would be their comment that would be negative? Like that they couldn't access the property, or
I would have thought that'd be one. It wouldn't necessarily apply here because development roads are accessible. I mean, they may have comments about that in other more remote locations up towards the north of the township, perhaps in some of the lakes, but so far I haven't received any negative response or feedback to any applications that we've had. Aside from access requirements, maybe kind of looking to relation to the management plan side of stuff. Like I know there's been some work done about particular types of bush which are more susceptible to wildfires. So maybe they would recommend something moving forward. I don't know, that says stay away from the places most flammable.
Or if
that's
it's
expertise, you know.
densification happening in an area that they feel is underserved from a water perspective, based on if it
Yes,
starts to get more condensed, they might have comment of, this fine, except, we caution. Need access to water or whatever it is, right? And it's
yeah,
yeah, because the idea of the fire department here and for the homes is that everybody should have access to the fire department so that your insurance is good, right?
yeah,
And back in Pine Lake in that area, there are very narrow
for sure.
roads where the big trucks can't get in them. But that would be something that, okay, would be a comment, but what the people would also be notified that the fire department, they may not have fire protection and can't get into the cottage, right?
Right, yeah, it's not something I've come across, but I don't need any further comments, but I mean, we're gonna talk more about the official plan next, and then these are all matters that might be worthy of discussion in that context.
So the fire department would have responded when there was a consent for the senior section, so on that parcel, they would have commented on, because the development was known at the time of the consent, so they would want to make sure about access and turnarounds and making sure everything, so they would make those type of comments.
And get ahead of it.
Yes.
Okay.
okay. Any other questions or comments? Public for a mover and seconder. Seconded by. But the planning advisory committee recommends council that consent application reference B2 2026 Landry, which proposes to a severance to create 2 new lots on lands legally described as Bondfield in section 6, E part lot 6, and RP 36R 9510 part 1 parcel 532 be approved with conditions as set out. All in favor? That's carried. Okay, into the much anticipated official plan review, so. Discussion on Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, one window review comments, which was received by the township on January 2nd, 2026. And I will hand it over to the planning administrator to walk us through that, and I'm sure we'll have some robust conversations. Either following that or at any point if we questions, perhaps we'll interject and talk about topics as we get through
Yeah.
them. Okay.
Yeah, so I'll kind of give it a high level overview. Again, if anybody's interested and wants to read it, there's a report on the website which summarizes this, but the report I'm just going to read off now is a planning report which basically kind of paraphrases or summarizes the feedback that we've been given by the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing. So if you recall, our file records indicate a lot of it was before my time, but the Planning Advisory Committee was engaged early on as part of the process, with PAC members informed at regular scheduled meetings, including on February 7th, 2023, that the township had selected JL Richards as its preferred planning consultant to oversee the review of both the replacement official plan and comprehensive zoning bylaw. So there was also an advisement at that meeting that a public meeting would be taking place, a special meeting of council, would be taking place on the 15th of February, 2023, in which JL Richards gave a high-level presentation on the legislative requirements associated with both documents. And then over the course of the next 17 months, members of the PAC were periodically engaged as part of the RP review until a newer version of it was produced, and then that was submitted as a draft to the ministry on the 19th of July 2024. So then in November 2024, the Ontario government adopted its new provincial planning statement, PPS 2024, which in effect replaced the former provincial planning statement. And in addition, as we talked about, I believe at a previous meeting, and certainly at council, the provincial government has put through a whole range of other legislation and continue to do so. Including Bill 23, More Homes Built Faster Act, Bill 227, Cutting Red Tape, Bill 5, Protect Ontario by Unleashing Our Economy Act, Bill 17, Protect Ontario by Building Faster and Smarter Act, etc. Now, all of those legislative updates have had a potential impact in terms of the wording and the overall construction, if you like, of the official plan for Bonnfield. So it's contributed to some of the delay, if you like, in the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, giving us their feedback today. But after anticipation, we did receive those comments on the 2nd of January of this year. And so over the past month, we've kind of been trawling through this, trying to cross-reference back to the plan, to the original draft. A whole binder on my desk here, which has got all the additional regulations and supplementary documents that they refer to. So there's going to be a lot of cross-referencing to see what those mean in practical terms for us. But our objective today really was just to bring this information forward to the PAC to say, here it is, these are the comments that the ministry have, and really to gauge your opinion, your initial thoughts on this, see if there's any questions that you'd like us to write down that we could take to our consultants and continue to work away at this, because it's an iterative process that's ongoing. So if there's anything that anybody would like to discuss, I mean, I can summarize those bits.
Simon, could I ask you a question?
Yeah.
There are so many comments here that
Yeah.
seems that they're not in favor of our official plan that we put here. And in here somewhere, I can't remember what page it's on, but it says that we would go with, instead of an amended official plan, we would go with a new one.
That's right. Yeah, that's the recommendation of our consultants as well.
Yeah.
Because they're saying with that, then we'd have an extra 10 years instead of 5 years. Could do the review again in 5 years, in 10 years. We can still do a review in 5 years if we wish, but we're not obliged to.
They also want to call this Bonnfield 2050. That's how long they want this to stretch out.
Well,
Well, that was actually our idea
Yeah.
to kind of give it a bit of a sense in terms of branding, to give a timeline to it, because it is 25-year plan essentially.
Okay, so unless there's any notional questions, maybe what we'll do is quickly, and if there's no questions and comments about a specific, comment, then great, we can go past. It doesn't preclude you from submitting questions that we would like the consultant to answer. We might have questions tonight as a committee that wouldn't be fair that are gonna expect our staff to know the answers to, but that's why we have the consultant and I was talking with CAO, the consultant is joining us on the future meeting.
At the March meeting.
At the March meeting?
Yeah.
So it'll give us some time to know to get our ducks in a row, what we would like. The consultant to speak to. So we will
It's the first Tuesday in March.
I believe it's also the 3rd of March.
Okay, I'll be here when.
So you're saying the consultant is coming in to go, to review things with PAC, the PAC committee?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So he'll likely be by Zoom, just because they're from Sudbury and further, one consultant's from Guelph, so they'll probably come by Zoom. And that meeting, we're also going to recommend having council as well. So that everybody's hearing the same thing, because council will ultimately have to adopt the plan, so it's good for them to hear the consultant do it.
As opposed to paying for the consultant voice to speak to her.
Yes.
That's fair, I can
Yes.
appreciate that.
That's
it's,
pretty
uh,
right.
it saves us doing it twice.
Is our consultant still the same?
Yes.
Now, I was just wondering, is there a reason why we don't have the draft official plan on the website?
Really? It might have just been because we did the website review, and so we were trying to get as much information on there as possible, and we knew that that plan, although it had been submitted, we didn't have feedback on it, so we didn't know how legally sound, and as we can see from the comments here, it's needs work. So there's no point creating a false sense of what that plan was when it's already considered well out of date, but
Well, like say, east, west Nipissing or some other townships,
yeah,
they're showing all their drafts, like all their versions.
yeah,
They're keeping their communities right up to date with it, that people can review. So right now, our community can only see 2013's until if they looked on the agenda under the planning, they would have seen the official plan.
right.
So I'm
Yeah.
asking if we could put that on the website, because it doesn't seem to be a legal problem if other communities are doing it.
No,
I have no problem, I think that's a good suggestion,
Yeah.
it's not that we're trying to hide anything, as you mentioned. We've had it very public in public meetings and
Yeah.
on agendas and stuff for good access. But for ease of access, instead of having to go back to find the right agenda with that on it, it would be good
Yeah,
to just
they-
have it on the website for sure.
Yeah.
We were doing, yeah, we'd already drafted the web text for that the other day, and that's probably a priority tomorrow, because we just want to get this package out, because you can see it's at, I don't know, 300 pages here.
Yeah,
So that
I
was,
think that's a good idea.
Commit to tomorrow, though, because you're not here.
okay, but Nikki's got the draft text, so it can be.
yeah, because I just think it'd be a good idea, because that's all we can see is 2013.
Yeah,
And then for us, it would have been handy too, if we would have got this in January, just the PAC, so that we could have had, the same amount of, kind of time just to look at it, and we would have been, through it and understood, and, would have been better, easier for us to go through, and we could have came back with our comments.
I think that's why we're suggesting that the consultants come on March 6th.
Yes.
So that you'll have time to review this now, because
Okay,
just receiving it on Friday, you don't have enough time.
No.
It took us weeks to go through.
Yeah.
yeah,
And just compare, because we don't expect the PAC committee to go and read all of these other documents, right? So we've matched everything up so that, well, Simon has matched everything. To kind of, to see, okay, how does that, what they're saying impact us? So we took that time to do that. We had one initial meeting with JL Richards just to go over some of the ones that we had big questions on. So if the PAC committee members can go over for the next month and review all of them, commit you to ask any questions so that we can make sure we get the answers. But there's nothing that says we can't ask the question when the consultants are here in March.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think in an effort to try and get as thorough of an answer as we can, if you have a question and you know ahead of time, submit it through the planning administrator.
Yeah,
And he'll make sure that it gets proposed to the jail Richards so that they can speak to those specific questions
yeah,
in English. So I think that's a good plan. It gives everybody the month to go through and any specific questions. I mean, I know that I have a couple of questions, but.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
because-
Nikki and I did have an initial call with them actually probably a few weeks ago, and they made a list of stuff that they would go back to the ministry themselves to clarify certain aspects of this table. So until we get that better information from them, it's all just questions at the stage. So that's what we really want to do, which is say, what questions do we have so we can get answers.
Because we're kind of also reviewing, you know, the OP because it's been a while, and also the draft, and then kind of so that we are, you know, addressing what's in the OP to comments.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I just feel that there are a lot of amendments.
Yeah.
And I think that as a committee here, we certainly should for sure go through it and understand what the changes are. If it's going to be another, we're putting this in the township for another 10 years or whatever, or 25 years.
Yep.
I like the committee to have hands-on and I know that it's a staff job to do this, but it's also our job here at this table to understand
Yeah.
what's going on, because to me, when we receive this many amendments, it makes a big difference as opposed to the official plan that we set into the province. And when we started this out, it's your plan. It's our
Right.
plan, but it's not our plan anymore.
yeah,
That's my feelings, and that's only my feeling. But
Yeah, so I will say, I appreciate the process that is unfolding, the fact that we are gonna have, you know, we have the ample time to review. Prior to the consultant, we'll have the consultant in front of us, to be able to ask those detailed questions that we may have come out. And to your point, I don't disagree that there's a ton of changes. And I will remind the committee or set some expectations that well, we can push back a little bit. We are creatures of the province, so we often get told thou shalt when the province and these are comments from the province. So while I would like to be able to test those comments and be able to ask those questions. Some of this is well out of our hands, and if the ministry comes back and says this will be in your official plan. Well, that's the challenge of being a creature of the province.
and just
Right, your
on that-
worship?
we're not
We've-
moving out.
We face that all the
Just
time
on
in
that
many aspects, not just this one.
it's just, we
Yeah.
just have to, you know, understand it. And ask the
Absolutely.
questions why, so
Yeah.
that we can also, we have answers then, you know, for the.
Yeah.
Community, not just say, oh, well, the government said.
Yeah,
so
no,
what-
1,000%, which is why I want to go through each one and we'll get the questions answered by the consultant so that we are all comfortable with it for sure.
Just for the record, we should say that, I mean, even though the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing is the one that provided the comments, they call them one window comments because they've done that consultation with others. So this is combined feedback on behalf of the Ministry of Citizenship and Multiculturalism, the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks, the Ontario Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Agribusiness, the Ministry of Natural Resources, the Ministry of Energy and Mines, and the Ministry of Transportation. So it's all of their feedback combined. So
Those people reviewed it and.
yeah,
Yeah. And I think what's gonna be interesting is to go through the exercise and understand it all, but look at it in the context of the planning. The province is changing planning almost continuously right now, so that's why our plan, our 13-year-old plan with even the amendments. Are now seeing some significant changes. I bet you we're not the only official plan that's gonna be coming back with a whole lot of, well, thank goodness it's not red. But like with a whole bunch of red markups of all the things that need to change to comply with the new provincial.
and there's a
Program.
consultation, maybe it's closed now, but it was launched just before Christmas. That the province is looking to standardize official plans across the whole of the province. So that, depending on how they want that to be done, whether it's next time it comes around, i.e. in 10 years, or they force us to do it in an earlier time frame, there could be a point where this plan needs to be looked at a whole over once again, and they want to, I believe it has a limitation of 150 pages. Knowing that some municipalities like Toronto's is going to be 405-page plan, there's a lot of editing to be done across the province.
Yeah.
So if we really didn't like it, could we send that objection back to the province? Or an amendment? to
We
the
absolutely could, for sure. And if they come back and say, well,
bad.
yeah, too bad, we're like, well, okay, fair enough, thank you, yeah. That's the position we find ourselves in the municipal world, so.
All I'd say is that some of the issues that they've raised do need to be taken seriously. It's just a legacy of how this community has developed over time. We've talked a bit about that, the heritage of it gone from, people clearing the land and they're creating agriculture to the lakes, and primarily was recreational, but now it's becoming more for seasonal uses, and a lot of the kind of land use conflicts, which some people have managed over time, but there's been unauthorized development has taken place in some instances. So all of this feedback is made in response to some of those issues on the ground that have happened for many decades now in Bonnfield.
And, my initial review of this, there are gonna be things, well, that I'm not happy with, from a municipal standpoint, when we look to want to grow and want to develop our municipality, there's things in here that, while the province wants to encourage that, it's also saying we can't do it on the waterfront, we can't do it, like, they have strengthened language that's saying, I'm like, okay, well, that's not great news for us as a municipality, when those are prime pieces of potential property that if somebody wanted to develop, and it just makes it more difficult, so I'm sure there'll be some robust frustration conversations that'll happen, and we'll see how attentive they are to that, and we'll take our marching orders at the end. It's sad, but that's the reality. So.
So it's up to, we can go with line by line if people wish, or is there any, what's really standing out? Is there any particular questions you want us to write down that we can take away?
I prefer just to start the
Do it at that.
exercise
Yeah.
and see how far we
Absolutely.
go together.
Yeah,
and-
that was kind of my plan, for sure,
Yeah.
and I can kind of go through, and again, I've
And I-
the big one, yeah.
Can I just ask one more question?
Yeah.
Then, also, there's also the draft zoning bylaw that's been done. So I'm just wondering, like, at some earlier point, then could, PAC also see that, so that we could kind of do a review, and it wouldn't be such a
So
rush or.
I believe we mentioned this before Christmas, but the process is that the official plan gets adopted first, and then within a
Yes.
12-month period after that you do the zoning bylaw. So we need to at least, even if it's not fully adopted, have a sense from the ministries, depending
Yes.
on when this next draft goes, about what's going to go, what give have they got, what give have we got, what's the plan looking like, and that's going to inform the zoning moving forward.
Mhm.
So although there is a draft, and I have started to review that now, but I've reviewed the wording of it, but I haven't got as far as looking at site-specific zoning and really making notes on that and seeing, what use is occurring on particular properties right now versus what is zoned for. So we need to understand that and understand the implications of that as a township, and probably communicate with those landowners too, really, and out of respect to them, it's their property that will be affected by that. So it's that due diligence that we're doing in the background, so. I don't know if it would be premature to bring that forward, or just would confuse matters given everything else we have going on. But
We've submitted, or the planning administrator again, the royal we, has submitted in some questions, just kind of cleaning up some of that language. So there's inconsistent definitions and stuff. So that's not, like, it's not at a product that we're comfortable, like, just here it is, like, we're still going through trying to, like, if this is what it says, this is how it's applied, so we're doing that technical part right now, as opposed to, we're not making strong comments on, no, we disagree with that policy or this policy, we're not going through policies, we're just going through that formatting and making sure the language is consistent.
Yeah.
So that when you do get it, it will be a much better product.
And there will be that robust conversation
Oh,
that will
absolutely.
take place on the zoning, but yeah, but to the planning administrator's point that, you know. The cart before the horse, like we have to kind of wrap this. And then really dig into that, and if we had a planning department of 7 people, it'd probably be a little easier too.
Yeah.
So what will happen? We're gonna go through this.
Yeah.
And then you're going to make the amendments.
On the official plan,
On the
JL
official
Richards
plan.
will, but with our guidance and providing resources and input for obviously feeding all this information from the back into that process too. So it's collaborative, but they're the ones that should make.
Then it will come back again. Come back again to the planning committee.
For sure, I believe. that we'll
And
find-
when do we meet with the consultants again?
Yeah,
March.
March.
so it might be that off the top of my head, maybe in March, maybe they take, whether they get that turned around by April or not, I don't know, whether they come back in May. But
Oh.
we have to factor in a public meeting into all of this as well, so
Yep,
that's
for
later
sure.
into the time frame, so we can at least get that scheduled. And then it'll just flow through, so I suspect it might be May when we're reviewing the final draft. Or June.
It could be.
And the
And we
public
have to
meeting-
give a 90 day.
I was gonna say,
Sorry.
it's a big, yeah, no, that's okay, and the public consultation is a larger window than. Typically, it's 90 days, is that what it is? Yeah, so it's. There's a process that we're still stepping out here.
So maybe in March, we could just have a little draft timeline made up for.
Yeah, that's, I produced that as well in draft, it's subject to approval, but Yeah.
And
Subject to change.
And so
Well,
change
yeah.
and consultants and ministry, and I
Yeah.
mean, lots of this is.
Just
not-
even the steps, not even the dates.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair.
yeah,
Yeah, the
that's
steps
all
would
that,
be good.
it's gonna go on the website.
Yeah.
Yeah.
very soon.
Okay, so why don't we get going on, we'll go through, and again, if we can breeze through some, great, and if we can't, no problem also. And for those that are watching online, you're gonna hear me start at number 2. And then I'm gonna go to 3, and then I can go to 7. For some reason, when it came back to us, there was no number, there was no number 1.
Yeah.
And no number 4, no number 5, no number 6, so it's not that we're. Not sharing anything, it's just it was ordered like that when it came to us.
Yeah.
So number 2, so it's the
First.
official plan wide, yep. So indigenous communities in Ontario include Inuit, First Nations, and Métis peoples.
So the first comment, it starts then with the official plan on page. Is this what they're referring to, Simon, for anybody that's wanting to know? We're going then to 6.12 of the official plan, is that
Yeah,
correct?
Yes.
except their
Yeah.
recommendation is that it's changes throughout the plan. Which is to change Aboriginal to Indigenous
Yeah.
peoples.
Yeah,
And
so
I-
just, this is the provincial, the PPS at the top.
Oh, is
that provincial policy statement?
Okay,
So that's what we
so
have
we
to
don't
conform
have,
to.
yeah, okay, but we don't have that
That's not-
document.
Yeah, that I,
Okay.
in my own review, prior to getting the minister's
Yes.
comments, I'd already identified that as an issue, because I knew that language had shifted over time.
Right.
It's the best
Okay.
practice now, say Indigenous rather
Yeah.
than Aboriginal.
So this is all referring PPS to the provincial plan section.
Yeah, or it'll tell you what the ministry is to what their policy, whatever their rule is.
And so we may not have that document.
No,
Like,
the
We would-
PPS
you have
is,
the PPS.
yeah.
It had been forwarded to you, so you would have it.
okay,
Yeah.
Okay, so any questions, comments on changing the word Aboriginal to Indigenous to ensure that it's including Algonquins of Ontario, Métis First Nations of Ontario? Guessing none. Number 3, again, it's official plan wide for clarity. You suggested that the terminology used be consistent with defined terms of provincial policy statement. So yeah, it's just an updating of terminology. Saying none. Number 7. For internal consistency. In the official plan policies, the consistency of PPS policy 2 may be useful to update the planning horizon.
what is,
At the provincial planning zone. BPS 2024. Not back here on
Okay.
yes, but if you get your phone, you can just Google it. That's the one that we've been basing most of the planning decisions off.
Okay, anything for number
Um,
7?
Just to clarify that bit
Yeah.
on number 7, Jason, yeah, so. In terms of like projecting forward with the population projections, JL Richards going to dig into this and get it, but the Ministry of Finance now produces those population statistics. It's on that basis that we're expected to produce targets and so forth moving forward. So that's they're digging that information out on our behalf right now.
If I can interject for a moment.
Of course.
This section also somewhat goes with number 56. In number 56, it's one of the last ones on the last page, but in the current official plan, we had asked to have a reset on the number of consents. There's a lot of property owners who had their 3 consents and they want to develop property more, so there might be 20 acres where they could still develop and put more consents on, so we had put that we wanted that reset when this one got adopted. And this is where the province is again saying, based on the population projections and what the ministry comes back with, we have to give them more information on why we need that.
Okay.
So. And J.O. Richards is looking into that. They go together.
And there was that comment there that we added about potentially following the plan Bond Bill 2050, but that's just addressing after we've finally written this plan. Yeah, back to me.
Okay, number 8, this is a shift, well, changing because we have no. Present, there are no municipal sources of drinking water in the municipality, and therefore there is no vulnerable policy areas. But we do want us to add significant groundwater recharge areas, designated highly, vulnerable aquifers. Are present in the township, as depicted in the schedule. I don't know what that is.
Yeah, so that's just
Can we
another
create-
source of information,
Yeah.
excuse the pun, that we need to look at there.
Right.
To see how that impacts potential land holdings around where those areas are. And it would be mapped out, already is mapped out on the system, but on the GIS system, but in terms of the actual mapping, it will probably show more clearly there as well, moving forward as a constraint to development, if you like.
Okay,
That will show in the mapping.
I believe that's the
They're
plan, yeah, for that to be clear there. Publicly, we see it behind the scenes, but like to be on show, so it's clear, but.
do we have that schedule? Next.
We've been developed it. It's one of the schedules that'll go with our official plan.
Yeah,
So the ministry is just saying you have to add this to that schedule.
It's interesting that they say that that there's recharge areas and designated height that are present in the township, but we don't even know where they're present. But we have that, okay.
There's a link on the other side, so that link here. I believe this was emailed as well.
Yes.
So you can go on and check to the link and then that will show you.
Oh, well, it's just with the agenda documents, so will it allow us to do that?
You might
should
have to
do.
do control and like, but you can.
yeah.
Anything else in number 8? Number 9, settlement areas, so they're encouraging us that growth and development shall generally be directed to the settlement areas of Bonneville and Rutherglen.
Yeah. So I mean, in terms, this mentions a couple of bits here about potentially reterming, so I mean, term hamlet, for me, coming from the UK, it's a bit medieval, right? And when we look at Bonfield as a whole, as a township, what do we want to present moving forward? So the province is settled for rural settlement areas, that would be a term, but not necessarily the most catchy. Our consultants, and maybe it's Bonfield Village or Rutherglen Village, but do we look at that afresh? But ultimately, the term hamlet would slip off the radar there. But in terms of like growth, as is best practice in planning, generally we want to see most development being guided towards the hamlets as they are right now. And they actually go further later in this document and talk about the potential for municipal servicing, which I don't think will occur in our lifetimes unless Bonfield suddenly takes off and becomes the fastest growing community.
There's always a shot.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm not sure if that's, that we would want that, to be honest, yeah. We like, moderate, sustainable.
We have spoken to the consultants about an expansion to the boundary. They want us to plan out 25 years. So the current, what we would now term the rural settlement area, there'd be one in Bonfield and one in Weatherglen, so they would grow like they'd be. From our official plan, we see that there's 2 little sections. We may want to just add a little bit more land, but again, then in order to do that, we need to have the population forecast, the updated. From when this started with the population projections from the ministry, and that goes into the justification as well with trying to reset that consent thing, so in here, it tells us what we need to do in order to do that.
Okay.
Is there, just out of curiosity, is there impact to a landowner if their property falls within the designated area or not? If you expanded, now someone's lot is within the
And that's a part of it, because if it's zoned rural, it can still be then rural within the rural settlement area, so those are things that we can look at. But essentially, really, it's just what the land uses are within that zone. But we have to identify where we want the growth. I would hope by 2050 that we have, because Bonfield, the hamlet of Bonfield is pretty much already grown out. So there isn't really there's limited growth within, because you can't sever, the properties are already too small, so you can't sever them more and more and more, so how do we grow if we want to identify?
We're at the discretion of the landowners, basically, because if someone has a property and you want to expand to it, and they don't want to expand, then basically.
But we got a
Yeah.
plan for 2050, so if you give somebody completely different who owns it in 2030.
Right.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is though, that if you move the boundary and say now the property is, you know, you have 100 acres and half your property is within the development area, is there anything that, like, do you have incentives for the landowners? And say now that you're within it.
If they were to sell it for development, that's a huge incentive in itself, I guess.
Right.
But we can certainly, that could be one of the questions that we asked J.O. Richards, is to explain that impact.
Right.
Because you don't want the taxes to go up, right?
Right, and all.
Oh,
the
no,
things-
it's matter of taxes,
You won't.
no, it won't affect taxes, it affects what that growth would look like on the property, need uses.
Right, and then all of the things that would be legal non-conforming to the existing owners of the
Absolutely.
property, right? So if you bought a real piece of property and you have a real piece of property and all of a sudden it's. Now half of it's in a hamlet,
Yeah.
there is a legal non-conforming component that would stay with the existing owner until. Change of use or change of ownership.
We'd rather do it like piecemeal. There might be a few opportunities for consent around the edges of the hamlet, but I mean, plans of subdivision might be the way to go moving forward. So the larger land holdings might have more potential to be developed faster to deliver that housing.
Well, I see all the names that they have here for the, not anymore the hamlet. It's residential focus area and community core focus area.
Yeah,
It's all, it makes our plan look.
Those are the current terms, they are the current terms.
yeah. There's a lot of crossover between those designations as well, the community focus area and the core, whichever one is. There's a lot of the uses are crossed over. There's one has a bit more of a residential focus, the other's got more of an employment focus, but there's a mix of uses, as we know, taking place in the hamlets. Yeah. Some compatible uses, some not so much, but.
And just both areas for the size of each community. They're pretty small areas, right? And that's what I keep trying to think, how are we going to add something more there and make it bigger? they're pretty settled right now, both of our, I'll say how much, but they're.
There's how much for now?
They're like, you can't put anything else in there, we're going to have to spread out. I see.
Yeah.
Where
Yeah.
our businesses, they're not gonna come in that hamlet of or the community of Bonnfield or Rutherglen, you can only put so much in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when I look at this and I look at some of the things, I want to believe that we're being realistic what our plan is.
Yeah.
That's my thoughts on it, because when we first started on the official plan and where they said we should be focusing on industrial in Rutherglen and in Bonnfield.
Mhm.
And that's okay, but I don't see it happening when you don't have the land there.
Right,
So we have to spread our community out in
yeah,
order to be able to do what this says we're going to do. That's just my thoughts about it, but
Yeah.
Haven't we talked about expanding the boundaries when we were first originally speaking?
Yeah.
And wasn't there a concern about expanding, like, was it at the agriculture?
Yeah, prime ag land.
Prime ag.
Yeah,
So in these comments, we have not been forced to identify anything as prime ag. So that's a good thing, but we still need to protect the farms that are currently operating. And that's where it'll get a little bit tricky. So there are farms that do get a farm tax credit, like, so they are registered farms, operating farms. And we need to protect those lands. And it's how they shift, right? So, I mean, I don't want to be pessimistic, but in this whole thing, we're not allowed to grow in the water anymore. We have to be very careful about the rural areas. And then we have to prove that we need to make more new consents. So I know we're not allowed to do a lot of pushback, but we did start having these conversations on where are we allowed to grow, but so we're gonna have to protect those rural areas that they didn't make us call anything prime ag. So prime ag would mean that if you want to do a consent, if you want to do anything in that big chunk of land, then nothing could be under 40 acres. And there's a lot of other rules. So in this one, they said, we're having the rural areas and we can do those clusters and building clusters around a farm property. So there's some concessions in here about that, but
I know we have trouble with extending boundaries because of,
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think there's a new subdivision in Rutherglen as well, so when that subdivision, it kind of helps us grow out some of that area. But again, it's all public consultation anyway, like I think when our planning administrator was talking that we're gonna have to send out letters, we're gonna have to communicate, so if we come up with a plan.
Yeah.
We need them to come to that public consultation meeting, so that they understand what's gonna happen to the land. Mhm.
There's a term, I forget now, but when we were going over the official plan, there's something to do with where we want to avoid, I'm just gonna call it cluster or grove subdivision,
Yes.
remember? that?
Ribbon.
Yeah, ribbon, that's what it is. So, but if we're maxed out on potentially in the future, we can be, maxed out on the hamlets.
Mhm.
Is there any consideration taking certain intersections and saying we have, 7 to 10 dwellings already on this intersection, and then there's potential for subdividing more and creating another village within that and saying now we have another village added to township.
we talked about that, I don't know whether we should go into that now, it's the right time or not, but there is,
We don't have to.
I agree with that, approach. I mean, there's always the country lot subdivisions, a smaller version, so you're right, you could have that attached to an existing cluster and create
Well,
new hamlets.
I'm just paying attention to what's happening in East Ferris and we all
Yeah,
drive down that one road and it's nothing but, is it the Gagne
Yeah.
signs? And they have basically the whole road is not the whole frontage now, right? And
Right.
so, I don't have an opinion if that's good or not. I'm just wondering if, they are navigating their efforts into our township now, and is that something that we are gonna be considering in the future, right? If the potential landowner wants to sell off their frontage and all of a sudden the Gagne scoops up 15 lots in a row and creates that, and maybe that becomes a new village.
we've certainly invited that conversation with them around you know, if they got any properties on their radar that they're interested in, so we can have that conversation, see how that feeds into this plan, 'cause otherwise they'd have to go back and maybe do zoning bylaw amendments and put all extra work. in.
Right.
Later down the line, you could build the plan now with that
Because
good
that would be-
conversation, so.
That would be considered ribbon, right? But not,
Yeah, but I believe they still did for subdivision,
yeah,
yes, but
Yeah.
it is ribbon development. And having clusters at intersection is something that the ministry is trying to avoid, cluster development, so that we're not recreating more of those areas, so. But great questions, I think that all of these planning theories have to, you know, like, let's ask our consultant, like, what's out there.
Yeah. And, you know, we're gonna plan this 25-year plan without really knowing what's gonna come around the corner for us, and then it's like, okay, well, if an opportunity comes. Okay, there, you know, is the planning advisory committee of the day and then council of the day gonna look to say, look, we need to support an amendment to be able to support that. Development, right, so. All of this feels like it's a big exercise for something that could and should, quite frankly, be reevaluated and. If the right opportunities come along.
I mean, I look at it that, you know, we're just. You know, we're just voicing our, you know, our opinions and, you know. Trying to make it right, but really the township is tasked with trying to promote growth. At the same time, you know, there's so many restrictions upon us that you have to like figure out in the magical equation in order for us to promote the growth, fit all this new growth in, but still slow the growth enough that we're not getting really, you know, a shock. Cause you know, you put 50 houses, you know, in 1 year and all of a sudden you know, everything changes, right? And now you're like, okay, well, our roads are, you know, not maintained well enough because now there's more traffic or, you know, and now I can't get to work on time because now I'm 10 minutes later because now there's congestion leaving this one road.
Right.
So I mean, like, we're trying to be responsible about it, but you know, we can't, you know, that's why I brought that ribbon thing up, because I know that I've seen it happen and I know that like, yes, there's a different way to do it within a subdivision application, but at the end of the day, to the person that doesn't have this literature in front of them, it's still the same thing. You just put a bunch of houses on the same street.
Yeah.
So,
You articulated that very well, and the push and pull within the same document can make your head spin a little bit, for sure.
Yeah.
But again, it's,
Daily struggle.
yeah.
Yeah, been looking at this back for over 18 months now.
Like, if you go down
I think about it often.
a couple of weeks later, when did they put that house up?
Right,
And when did that house come up? And there's, the development is very rapid, I think, in our community.
Mhm.
All the new houses, I like to see them now.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you can bump into, you know, 5 different community members and I'm still not convinced of my own opinion. I don't know what's the best for this community is to have a subdivision in, you know, like what's happening, or is it better that, you know, let people get their lots and build their own homes and build character rather than a builder come in and all this quick cut. So no, again, I don't have an opinion. I'm just saying like there's different angles on it, right? Some people might say, wow, I mean, it's great because now we have, you know, 18 more houses. Great, but then
Yeah.
someone else might come in and say, well, yeah, but that was a business move and now, you know, the township gets the tax money, you know, Devanya's got their profit, and then now you're stuck with, you know, 18 of that kind of simple design houses that are just cookie cutters, and it doesn't really give us a Rutherglen feel. It gives us more of, okay, now we're doing the same thing as these fairs.
yeah, so
Yeah.
I think what's gonna ultimately drive it is the market. So it's to your point, I think. As a property owner or as somebody who I'm gonna move out to, I'm looking for a piece of property. I don't think they're necessarily looking for Bondfield to say, I wanna live in Bondfield, or I'm gonna live in East Ferris. I think they're looking for the right piece of property that they wanna build. Some people are gonna look for, I like to live in a subdivision. And so I'm gonna look for a subdivision that I can build a home in. And some people are like, I'd like 10 acres or 100 acres that I can put my house right in the middle and see nobody, right? Like, so people just like different things, so.
Absolutely.
That's, and I think we have to be open to that. So when I start reading things, we're gonna encourage development in the hamlet, I'm like. Not if somebody does, like, if you come to Bondfield, but I really wanna live in Bondfield, but I want 10 acres. Well, you should live in the hamlet. Well, then I'm not gonna move to Bondfield, like, that's. Not if you want 10 acres, right? So.
And just to your point there about naming any companies,
Right.
you know, about promoting innovation in the housing sector. We did host a developers forum prior to Christmas. I know you couldn't make it.
I couldn't, I wanted to be here, I had to be in Toronto.
Yeah, but the whole idea behind that was to promote innovation. So we had people that are experts in modular technology, sustainable homes. There was this representative from the Northern Home for Innovation in Housing. And we know that housing delivery itself being pushed down federally, they're saying the only way that we're going to accelerate housing delivery and actually catch up to the deficit that we have is to shift to modular and panel-based forms of construction moving forward. So there's opportunities for here in the north as well, not just to actually build the houses, but to build the employment infrastructure to build the components for the houses themselves.
I must hurt your head in the field that you're in. They're pushing modular like that.
You know what, I just worked on a project where there's a hospital being built in Moosonee and it's being built in Montreal and we're shipping it on trains because of, you know, the remoteness of Moosonee. And so now we have a 3-story residential building being built by wood frame in shoeboxes with all the utilities, everything inside, and we're shipping them out by train and stacking them by train.
We have train lines in Bonfield.
Yeah, so.
I just wondered at what point it's like, hey, here's your catalog of 100 different cookie cutter homes. That's great. You made some money creating 100 different things in the catalog. You're like, well, now what? Yeah, you know,
Yeah,
that'll keep you busy for your entire career, but your whole your whole profession will be like, well, they created a catalog already. They don't need me anymore.
well, maybe.
There are.
No, there'll always be
municipalities that
custom
do
homes. There'll
that
always.
too. There's already municipalities and the province is kind of leading all of us into that direction is pre-approved building plans. So
Mhm.
architects will come in, they would create these, 5 different plans, they're pre-approved. It's like if you buy these plans from the architect, then you can build this, it's already pre-approved, it's easy
Yeah.
to get the permit and.
Yeah.
So there's a lot.
I see the advantages of it. I more see the advantages in
Yeah.
school should be like that. Hospital
Mhm.
should be like that. Like I'm thinking like, anyways, we're well off of the topic of
Yes.
number 9.
But it all
Okay.
impacts affordability.
Sure,
The
this
quicker
may
we
be
can
anyway.
increase
Back
supply,
in order.
Yeah.
Yeah.
quicker we can increase supply, the more that housing will become more affordable
Yeah.
again, which is a big issue for everyone.
Okay, number 10, Simon.
Number 10, so this refers to land use compatibility and influence areas is now referring to them. The need to avoid impacts between major facilities and sensitive uses. So it refers to some of the guidelines that are produced by the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks. So this is more on the technical side for sure. I don't believe we had any concerns about this one. No.
Anybody have any questions on that? Perhaps we should skip number 11. Okay, number 11.
Number 11, so water courses and lake shore development. So this section appears to mix policies. This is their comment as relating to potential disposition of shoreline road allowances with other concepts. So it's recommending a kind of division in that sense in terms of like how the administration of shore road allowances handled. But the main comments in this one really do relate to the point that we did encounter through last year in the process of was it when we were developing the housekeeping bylaw? Yeah. So the conservation authority at the time did get the township feedback when they said that they would be requiring from there on a 300-meter runoff essentially between any new development and some of these lakes which are deemed to be at capacity for development purposes. So for anyone watching that hasn't caught up with this, what that means is that some of the lakes, just given that they sometimes because the topography of the lake, the shallow lakes, they don't turn so much, they become stagnant, let's say. There's some water quality issues in the township. It's impacting fish habitat, potentially people's clean drinking water source. So they're sticking to the line here, I would say, in terms of like they're essentially saying until the lakes get cleaned up, there should be significant limitations in terms of waterfront development.
Questions or comments at this point?
So where do we stand then with existing lots? I'm not talking about new development.
Yeah.
I'm talking about, and I don't really believe there's that many lakefront building lots.
Some,
No, that are already like deemed building lots, like not, with severances and the, new development. So we're in our meeting before we would,
Yeah.
it stated that we would, the existing building lots would not be affected, correct?
I interpreted it that way when I remember this question was
Yeah.
asked, that at capacity means that it's taken into account the current
yeah,
lots. So if there's empty lots, then those are taken into account as if there'd be a dwelling unit on there already. Because
Yeah, that
they
was my
can't, because they
understanding.
can't halt that because you've purchased a lot. But
But
what it
it's-
means is that, you can't subdivide that lot in half and then now you've created two
right,
lots on the same like.
yeah. That was certainly what we pushed for, to maintain the rights of landowners that only have those properties.
Okay.
I think we were consistent, all of us, in terms of that if someone, the ministry so far is not agreeing to that approach, but we'll see. Maybe that is one question for them.
Okay.
I wrote that question down, so how does this, because we do have lots of record that would not meet this 300-meter setback. So if they can't meet the 300-meter setback, like some entire properties are within that 300 meters, so they wouldn't be able to have a septic, they wouldn't be. Or they'd have, in order to get a building permit, they might have to do an environmental impact study. To say that what they're doing is not going to impact the lake. But these are the new policies from the ministry that I don't know that they're going to budge, but we've certainly said, like, this will be hard to do. So what happened to them? So I've got this question so that we can ask the consultants.
So we're trying to still keep the existing building lots out of that
Requirement.
requirement.
I'd say that's a fair that we wish to keep that. They have said no more further intensification or development, so we did have that question going back and forth about whether detached additional dwelling units will be permitted on waterfront lots, and I think that's a no-go.
Yeah, that's
at this
further
stage.
down.
So that's an area that I still have an issue with because. If you just take, I know I don't really like talking theory, I like doing practical, but I'm not gonna use any of the current developments on the lake right now, but like, let's say someone has a small house, little bungalow. They buy the lot with the house, the lake's at capacity, but they wanna upgrade that house now, they wanna put an addition to it, second story, add a couple washrooms, upgrade the septic because it requires it.
Right.
So they didn't do an additional dwelling unit,
Mhm.
but they expanded their house. Now, same situation is if you have a small house and you want to create a granny suite and you add one kitchen and one washroom,
Right,
really the scenario. The numbers are identical. You can say this house and this house are exactly equal, but one is deemed an ADU because they wanted it. An
Yeah.
ADU, the other one is just a renovation. And one would be permitted and one would not.
yeah, and I still believe that we would try to push back and maintain the attached ADU or secondary suite as it's known in the waterfront properties, that we maintain that provision. That's what our hope would be for this, because you don't want to lose all those rights altogether. Totally take your point, and we did
Yeah.
have that conversation with our building official, that very
Yeah.
scenario, what would you do?
And I'm
Minus-
not trying to rock the boat,
yeah.
and we don't have to get into at this meeting, but like,
Yeah.
that's one of the things is that, it's, past meetings, it was kind of like, no, it's not gonna happen, and.
Yeah.
Just gonna turn this off. Sorry, that's.
Okay.
No, but I mean, that's something that I would like to talk about in another meeting again, because.
Yeah.
There's, yes, of course, I'm in that situation myself, with
Yeah.
where I am, but, but I can kind of navigate and say, like, there are times where you like, you can't just close the door on that.
My initial response would be, if you're adding more fixtures and fittings and there's a septic and then that's bringing in the conservation authority, it complicates matters. If anybody's just putting an addition, just physical space on the property, so long as they're making sure that the construction management's being handled well, like you're not clear cutting trees and contributing further to erosion and all that stuff, then I can't see that being a problem in terms of expanding the footprint.
Yeah.
It's just when you get into the fixtures and fittings.
Absolutely, and I wanna do it responsibly too, where you look at someone's lot and they have 4 acres, then another person has 3/4 of an acre. And then it should be looked at and say, okay, we'll work with you, but really on a 3/4 acre lot, you can't even expand your septic, so it's a no-go. Do you agree? Yes, we agree, it's kind of, but a 4 acre lot would be like, you can definitely fit. Another septic system and a small dwelling unit. So because of that, let's just do a one-off evaluation. perhaps at the cost of the, you know, the owner. And that would be more satisfactory, because now basically shows that we're not closing the door on potential, you know.
Yeah.
Then we could just say, listen, your lot is actually pretty interesting, where you actually can build at 290 meters away from the lake, which is just shy, but we can still work with you on that, right?
Yeah. And there is a long list of documents that we've asked us to include, as within the official plan, because you have to have that list there to be able to request it as part of new development. I'm just trying to find the right page for that here. I'm just going to see if they include that, like a lake shore capacity assessment, or whatever you might call it. Was the erosion plan slope stability analysis? So that might apply in that floodplain analysis mapping. Servicing options report, the stormwater management plan. So there's a few different plans there that could potentially be sought from happen.
Adjacent to this, maybe you guys know, but we had a delegation go down to Roma recently, the Rural Ontario Municipal Association. And we requested a meeting with the Ministry of Conservation Authority, I forget the exact or whatever.
Environment.
Yeah, with the initial going in to talk about our concern about our existing North Environmental Conservation Authority and how it felt like it wasn't servicing the municipality as well as we would like it to. Very much used the example of what this committee experienced, which was, you know, we asked for working through additional dwelling units. They said no on our existing lakes. Great, can you provide the study? No, we can't provide the study. Can you come and speak to our committee? Sure, gets pulled at the last minute. Like, we're left holding the bag as a committee. And quite frankly, that's unacceptable to us when the Conservation Authority needs to be there supporting the municipality and be the experts in the field. That's their job. So we definitely voiced that to the ministry, and they were receptive to it. Now, in the meantime, after we asked for that delegation to speak to that issue and a couple other things, they announced that they're looking at creating 7 conservation authorities. So changing what is all of the conservation authorities and down to 7. Obviously, we had to take the opportunity to talk about not wanting to lose the voice of Bonfield, not wanting like our constituents to continue to have good service or a level of service that we're not drowning out by the larger municipalities that will be in this catchment area. So, and when I in the hotel lobby bumped into the CAO for the municipality of North Bay, we were just talking about the delegations we had, and I said that we had this. Like, they were actually a little bit jealous that we had that we got granted that delegation, which always makes me feel good. But you know, expressed this is what we talked about, and they said we're feeling that from the city of North Bay. Like, he could empathize, imagine what we're feeling from a municipality our size versus they have 50,000, and they're feeling like they're going to get drowned out and not be heard. So we definitely took the opportunity to politely have that conversation with the ministry to express our trepidation. So
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's a good move.
yeah, I just wanted to, I thought of it as we're talking about, like, oh, you guys deserve the loop back of, you know, that is one of the things that we that made a priority to speak about, and just the exact experience that we had going through the ADU, which was frustrating for all of us. So anyways, okay, anything else for number 10?
So it seems like waterfront properties are a big hit. And not in a good way.
Not in a good way, yeah.
Because I'm always surprised by that, because in so many areas, like, they can do septic and gray waters without affecting the groundwater. It's funny that someone hasn't came up with something.
There's
know.
certainly is innovation that have taken place all across Europe, and I'm hoping that's going to come to Canada.
Yeah.
Not these opportunities.
We need the province to, and Julie, when you hear about this, like, there are systems out there in use, but the province has to approve it being used
Yeah,
in Ontario.
because they're all over being used that doesn't affect groundwater and.
Lots means, even for us to get a holding tank here at the municipal office, we had to go through a lot of those things. just to have a holding tank here, because there's no way we can have a septic bed in this
Yeah.
property.
But that's all they have in Illinois. It's a holding tank.
Yeah,
So 100%, Gina, I
Yeah.
completely agree, and that's like,
Absolutely.
on behalf of property owners, I'm hoping we can help make sense of this. You know, it's David and Goliath, but hope we'll try our best here with the province. And then obviously, as we talk about, 300-meter setback, and properties will not meet that. Well, we're basically taking somebody's property. And said, sorry, you had a future plan development on it, you can't develop on it. And we've made your property basically worthless, not worthless, but like what was a development lot for a home. You can't build on it anymore, that's not fair at all.
And I think that'll go back to Cam's idea, of, like, we can do site specific, so maybe they need to do that environmental impact assessment. So the property owner who wants to put the house on it, that's what they'll do.
Right.
Like, they'll have to jump through a few more
Yeah,
hoops.
it's expensive.
They're just never happy when we're the ones saying that you have to jump through these hoops, when it's not,
Right,
Yeah,
it's not the township implementing, but.
We're just gonna-
We are responsible for the health of the lake, so we have to have the policies.
it goes back to your point as well about, should the draft zoning be shared right now? Well, the draft zoning was based on the draft plan, which is being kiboshed by the
Mm.
province, so it's really not applicable. And it would really create that false sense of impression for some people in properties that go, oh, look, this is zoned for whatever, and then now it doesn't apply, so it would not be responsible to really circulate that in this platform.
Is anybody going to the North Bay Manawa conservation meetings anymore from the
Steve.
township?
Mhm.
Oh, he is.
Yeah, he's-
Okay,
yeah.
because I thought,
Yeah.
I thought somebody, mentioned. He wasn't.
Oh, no, he goes.
No, he's,
They
Right.
have. A great deal of meetings, so he goes as often as he meets all the monthly meetings he does,
yeah,
he attends.
and it's, maybe we need someone to kind of push to say, hey, you're giving all these restrictions, let's come up with some solutions.
In this case, it's the ministry that's proposed this, no doubt they've consulted with the conservation authority in making these comments, but
Yeah.
I take your point, they need to get back to their core business of managing the watershed and less of the. Matters which have been discussed. on this
Yeah, yeah,
meeting.
I'm sure there's solutions.
And that, did you know, we learned this, our conservation authority is the only conservation authority in the province that does septic.
Really?
Yeah, it's enshrined in a bit of legislation, or whenever they made conservation authorities, the building code, ours is there. No other conservation authorities do it across the province.
Ours is in the building.
Yeah.
I believe when I did bring that up to the conservation authority, they said Rideau Lakes may also do it.
Not
But it may
according to
not
their
be-
boss.
Yeah, it might not be within the legislation,
It used to
but
be
we
that
are
way.
actually
Yeah.
in legislation. The conservation authorities. using
Anyways,
those.
just
It
little
used to be
tidbits.
MOE.
And then everybody wants conservation authority to take it over. No, they want the township to take it
In
over.
health unit, it's kind of gone,
Mhm.
it's buckets.
Okay, we're on to number 12 of 56, here we go.
Yeah,
Regressing one more minute, if I
Uh-oh,
may,
yes,
but
of
when we
course.
had that meeting with the minister, we did say, please don't touch the septic system.
Yes.
We want the system with conservation,
so that service works well, it's efficient, and,
very well.
yeah.
Okay, number 12, I'm gonna get a glass of water, can I give anybody anything while Simon's talking?
What you got there?
Water?
Yeah.
Just water, just water, Simon.
If it's
Here we
not
go.
an
I'll have
expense,
water.
Yeah.
it should be in some in that big gold one.
You want to water it, Jimmy?
if there's extra water.
Yeah, there's water, I'm going.
Probably none back.
Yeah,
We have water.
I looked to see, I thought
We
I
do.
had brought my water in.
Oh, is everybody okay with warm water? Oh, yeah.
There is no one.
Thank you. You're welcome. Sorry, Simon, keep going.
Okay. So 12 relates to water and wastewater services. So for consistency with PPS policies, it's saying the OP should acknowledge the preferred servicing hierarchy as it refers to it. It just gets into a little bit more about the view of long-term planning in regards to the hamlet / villages, whatever they might be called. And it's basically saying that in order to keep growing over time, and they need a minimum lot size in order to kind of legally and in a health perspective, contain both a septic system and a well. So the properties can only be minimized to a certain extent. So in order to achieve alternate or more efficient forms of development, and reduce some of any of that potential for cross contamination, that communal systems could be a way to go. We had a bit of a conversation about that. It would certainly require a little bit more
It's just, yeah.
learning
Page 5.
on our behalf regarding that, but you know, depending on the size of the development, whether it's privately owned and managed, there's potential there, but it needs further exploration.
Number 13. Oh, sorry, questions, comments?
This, what, going back to the 300 meters, like. What lot would even have that? Even available?
There are some,
Yeah,
there
But-
are some, if you look through the whole, there are some, but it's not. And the three
Far
hundred
between.
meters are on the, where there's trout fish, so that's Talon. And,
Turtle Lake.
yes,
But it
Neither
also,
two.
also said the rivers and tributaries, so the Kyboscon Bay, Kyboscon River and Lake Nosbonsing are also a capacity.
but they're not trout.
They're not trout, so yeah, there's less of a setback requirement for those, but the others,
Oh, so.
development still restricted on
In
the
number
others, because
nine.
the lakes themselves are still a capacity.
No, like number 9 here on that sheet, it says proposals for development within 120 meters. Or 300 meters for lake trout lakes, so those are the lakes that have lake trout fish.
Yeah,
Okay, so that.
And somewhere else it says that it's Talon and Turtle.
Yeah.
That those are.
For lake
considered-
trout.
Yeah, 120 is still, it can
That's not
still be a
bad.
challenge
Yeah.
for some of our properties.
yeah.
Okay,
12 covered.
yeah, some crown land.
Okay. We've talked, I believe, about recategorizing different types of crown land. I'll have to admit, I wasn't familiar with the word different types of crown land. So I'd like to know what those classifications are. I'm sure we could integrate that, but I've seen other,
All the green.
yeah, well, yeah, but I mean, what defines the different components of crown land? And there's talk about, I don't know if it was, some draft legislation or it was like just commentary in one of my emails that came through. It was saying about making crown lands more resourceful. So actually utilizing them for like agroforestry and food production and stuff like that. So there's talk about maybe opening up some crown land for alternate uses while still protecting it in its natural state. So really that's what that's trying to say. And also not to, yeah, the rights of the Algonquins of Ontario and other Indigenous peoples. So we're trying to do some further outreach there just to make sure that we've covered those bases as well.
Looking around, so none, number 14.
Adequate and affordable housing this relates to, so this is referring back to, even though we mentioned previously the finance minister projections in terms of population growth, this is refers more specifically to the District of Nipissing Social Service Administration Board and its 10-year housing and homelessness plan. In fact, there was another consultation that they put out today, which I haven't looked at yet. But the plan that we have a copy of that. It does provide a breakdown of the different forms of unit sizes from 1-bed to 2-bedroom apartments, multi-unit housing, all the way up to larger homes. And it's got some of those kind of projections, if you like, about what Bontville would need to build out moving forward to kind of, well, create a balanced community that meets all housing needs.
And I'll just say they asked how we're gonna support the DSAB's plan. We send them a boatload of money as it's levied to our municipality. That's how we, like, our taxpayers pay their fair share of supporting the DSAB and dealing with that issue. It's concentrated in North Bay, that issue, but it still is a regional issue and our taxpayers pay for it. So I'm a little lost on the comments as to how we're not supporting it, but
I think in our official plan, we haven't set that target, that minimum target
Yeah,
for the housing, so we haven't included enough. Verbiage about when somebody comes, if somebody came in and said, I wanted to do a 20-unit apartment building, there's limited language that would say that, okay, we would like 2 of those units to be at a like 20% less than the market.
I believe it's somewhere they wouldn't be more than 8 or 10 at a time, so you might do that in 2 phases, but that goes back to the
Yeah.
whole point about the hamlet expansion, the communal servicing systems. So if you get the point that there could be opportunity there to kind of create some more dense forms of housing that use more innovative or systems for maintaining sewage. That's is housing that would probably it's good housing for local people to keep them in the community involved.
I do feel the need, I'll say it on the record. To say
Yeah.
that as we, of course, will build housing in Bonfield. The housing that we will building. Will have a less impact on the 10-year housing homelessness plan and housing needs study supply to address housing and homelessness service issues gaps. It'll have far less to do with that than if the province could actually figure out what to do on the addictions challenge. So interesting that they're blending it into here. I'm not saying that our province is not short of housing, they're absolutely short of housing. Bonfield building our housing target is not gonna fix the homelessness problem in the city of North Bay or any other municipality. It's just not.
Yeah.
That.
Noted.
No, this might be advice I've given to every single township and municipality, so I mean.
Again,
So you have to add some verbiage into the OP in regards to.
yeah.
Yeah.
So the province is
Targets.
against
That last
homelessness.
paragraph.
Yes.
Say where they're at.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was 14. I'll keep going unless anyone objects. 15 is additional residential units. So obviously we created some policies for that. It mentions again about 300 meters of the lake being a capacity there. So just bearing that in mind, there'll be no detached ADUs released in regards to waterfront properties.
Are we still trying to possibly within a property,
I'd like
like the secondary dwelling?
I'd like to hope that's possible, that we could push back for that. Yeah, that's fair, right? Yeah, so it's all about the compliance there. And then there's number 17, regard to group homes. So this was saying that in accordance with the Ontario Human Rights Code and the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, you can't really limit the number of units or bedrooms, if you like, that would be incorporated within an individual group home. And off the top of my head, I feel it was like 8 to 10, that range that we kind of put in the draft plan. So they're saying don't have a limitation. A group home could be any size. But in reality, I can't see many people building them much bigger than that anyway. And I don't believe we have one in Bonfield this time anyway, so.
No, and this comes back to where are the services located? Bonfield does not have all of the services required for
Yeah.
individuals with highly special needs, so.
Right.
It'd be
18.
great if we had all of the medical services we would possibly need here, but.
Yeah. So number 18 relates to community gardens and urban agriculture. So it was talking about open space uses. It's a little bit of a complex one. This is where they were talking about the proximity to heritage properties as well. So we don't have any designated heritage assets within the community. We don't have a heritage committee. There is the Steel Rails group, which is focused on bringing awareness to heritage in the township, which is a great service, if you like, they provide for recognizing where Bonfield has been. So yeah, I don't think there's any plans to designate heritage properties, but it might be an exercise for them, perhaps, or us moving down the line to look and say, you know, what particular assets around the township do have value. Let's say, how can we recognize them as and the contribution they make to the culture and the built form of Bonfield. St. Bernadette's Church to me stands out as one. It's prime at the top of the hill. It overlooks towards the sunset. It's a beautiful building. It would be a shame to see it torn down, but such is life. All right, so number 19.
Community garden, sorry.
Yeah.
So I'm just don't, where you said shall only be permitted on or adjacent to a protected heritage. Are
Yeah.
you stating that they could, a community garden, am I reading that right?
It sounds like a generic, so let's say you're in downtown Toronto or something and there's a church there and somebody's building a flashy apartment block and they want to have a green roof community
Yeah.
garden or something on it. That's where I see that applied. It's about the sensitivity of architecture in that context just doesn't apply here. Really.
But are you saying that it shall only be permitted?
If you look at the left hand side, because these are their
Yeah.
comments, so.
18 on one. Is that your comment?
No, this is all their comments.
Oh, this is all their
Area
comment.
Only
Yeah.
be permitted on or adjacent to.
Yeah.
That isn't that, like, is that something we
No,
would
We
wanna?
don't support.
And
No.
we don't have protected heritage, it's not.
No.
We could include it as policy, but there's no protected heritage assets, so the policy.
Oh, so- Okay, so that's what we,
So 19 wayside pits and quarries, portable concrete and asphalt plants. So this one's talking, municipalities shall not permit development or site alteration on or adjacent protected heritage properties or on lands containing archaeological resources. Again, the heritage properties bit doesn't apply. The only area that could apply, there's certain lands, there's an ANSI, an area of natural and scientific interest, which is located off LaPlante Road, and there's a quarry which adjoins that, which I believe is currently for sale. So they might just need, if depending on whoever bought that or whatever their plans were, if there was any potential to ever expand that operation, it would stop it. It would need an analysis. It would trigger some of these studies to be done to prove that it would not have an adverse impact in terms of that natural heritage. That's what that really saying.
Where's the natural heritage based off of? Well, I'm trying to think what it is.
Well, that one in particular, we've been trying to find that out, and that's on the consultants list as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's two ANSIs within the township. There's that one and there's the Baltic Creek Reserve. So when I looked through when it was first documented, which I believe was like 2007 or something like that, it just says it's a candidate. It doesn't say why it's a candidate, if it's in relation to like fauna, flora, what is the actual value of those
Probably
properties.
just one development back up and they on
Yeah.
They're all crown land too.
Right,
It's all on crown
Oh,
land. So
interesting.
it's, and 19 deal with the wayside and the portable, so that's a temporary setup. As opposed to like the permanent pit and quarry, this is just that temporary, the way pit or the portable.
yeah.
So we would not permit them in certain areas.
then, so for next, meeting or whatever, is it the intent that municipal staff is going to then add another column for change of wording or what the plan is to address? Yeah, recommendations.
So we could look at that, yeah.
Yeah,
It's good idea. I can't wait to send it back to the ministry. They're like, yeah, thank you.
We'll have to print it out on tabloid or maybe on the plotter, but.
I am, you can tell they beat this down. I've been on the circle for a few years now.
When you mentioned the archaeological potential. As far as I know, there's nowhere in our township that has been designated as such. So if somebody goes to develop land and who would determine that that would fall under archaeological?
Archaeological.
You know, with the subdivision too.
Yeah.
It's in the
Yeah.
act, it's not
It's
just.
very costly to,
Yeah,
there's a number of options to determine as to whether it is.
yeah,
But if it's not designated, that might be something that would be determined when they start developing the land.
yeah.
Yeah.
And in the course of that application, we did put a condition in there, but through those negotiations, that one was taken out, and I believe council resolved that wouldn't be applying that
And
circumstance.
phase one is just a tabletop, I believe, of an archaeological assessment. They
Yeah.
actually don't even go on site. They're just gonna look at grounds around them.
Yeah,
Typically, if you're so close to the bank, a river bank
Yeah.
or something, then they'll kind of look a little bit closer on that. But essentially for Bonneville, because we don't have any identifiers, when someone starts to dig and they find an artifact, then there's an onus on the owner to report.
Yeah, because the Algonquins traveled up the river, right?
Yeah.
And the fur trade and everything, so it's not likely that it would be in our township.
Right.
Remember.
That's-
Just me.
No, I'd agree with that. I'd say that's the primary area of interest, but even so, there's not been any, I haven't seen anything on file anywhere to say that there's been archaeological finds. Yeah,
I remember when I first got on council last term, you were on planning advisory and we were dealing with that.
We ran into
Church,
that
was nothing,
problem,
yeah. That was sticky.
And because it was the church. The cemetery was close by
Yeah.
and the
right.
church was torn down. But I think there are other locations where there were churches. Down on Talon Lake, I have a beautiful picture of a church, was called Saint Philomene.
Oh,
And I have a picture. I'll bring it in one time for you to see that.
sure.
And there were churches around different places and no longer there.
Yep.
Yeah. That's
But generally we're accepting of what their proposed amendment is there. No concerns? No. And so number 20, streetscaping, beautification and property maintenance. So this talks about property standards bylaws. We do have one in effect. This current council has been implementing its will to, beautify Bonfield, the township as a whole, let's say, so that work continues. Any questions on that one?
I don't know, exactly what they want us to put in.
I think they want us to refer to the bylaw number, so like the township has a property standard.
Yes,
And that will be followed as opposed to putting it in the official plan, because property standards don't fall under the planning act. They fall under the building code. So I think they just want us to refer to it and change the wording in there. It's minor.
yeah,
Yeah. Number 21,
Steve, you have a bylaw.
and it would say or any successor bylaws, because it's subject to change, right? So number 21, stormwater management. So again, it's saying about consistency with the provincial planning statement. So a new section outlining what the stormwater management requirements are. That's probably going to require a little bit of work, I would say. I mean, obviously the township was affected by a microburst this past year, and that's had a significant impact in terms of Nikki knows more than me, she sees the spreadsheets, but the budget and the finances of the township as a whole. And if those events become more frequent and intense in their duration over time, it might require municipalities to really look afresh at, like, when you're building infrastructure, how do you build in those naturalized areas so you've got more area to store water, to prevent that runoff, to prevent the damage that causes to roads and bridges and infrastructure. So really that's kind of like asking us to look at that as a policy. What standards do we expect moving forward?
Yeah, that's impossible to predict going through that. Look at Sicily, that just in Italy, that centuries old infrastructure that worked perfectly for every storm they had, and then it just got overwhelmed and.
Yeah.
There's huge damage, right? So.
I mean,
But
go on.
I think they're suggesting that we put in those policies, so that right now we already have drainage and we have a drainage act that says you have to keep all the drainage on your own property, so you can't purposely put drainage on on your neighboring property. So it'll be putting some of that wording into this, so that it's said you will be creating a plan for how you're dealing with drainage. Especially in the larger developments.
Yeah, and we know that the steeper a hill, the faster the rain is going to run off too, and the more likely it's going to flood at the bottom. So there might be
How many years go to school to know that?
so there might be areas which are more susceptible to flooding than others. They might be the ones we focus on.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
Yeah, priorities.
Right, so number 24, hamlet settlement areas. So to avoid confusion and redundancy, it's recommended that servicing policies, it's going back to that about how to service development, need to reserve system capacity for both domestic waste and hauled sewage. And it actually because I believe the draft had said that we could reduce the minimum lot size down to 0.8 hectares and saying that it should be retained at the 1 hectare size that was for the current plan which we have. And so I'd assume that the hydro G therefore for lots of 0.6 hectares or above would be required. And you wouldn't allow new lot creation less than 0.6 hectares unless there's a zone bylaw amendment.
So they're suggesting 1 hectare.
It's 1 hectare without hydro G, or if you do a hydro G study, then you could get it down to 0.6 hectares and could prove that there's sufficient land and.
Okay.
We do have the provisions, just different sites in there, and then I think they're just asking us to clean up some of that language.
Yeah,
The definition around where light industrial, because right now our official plan just says this is a settlement area and these are the permitted uses. So you could have a gas station right beside a hospital, kind of in the, I mean, it's not Bonfield,
No,
But-
I get it, yeah.
but they're saying, you know, clean up some of that language.
yeah. 25, so that relates to residential focus areas and community core focus areas, which are existing designations. And again, it's just a tightening up of the wording, and perhaps some of the mapping as it applies to those designations in both Bonfield and Rubber Glen. There's nothing really significant there. Maybe, yeah, there's an adjustment to the uses perhaps. But that will be, we can look at that as we move forward. 26, employment focus area. So it should be identified as a designation with relevant permitted uses and policies. I support this one. Just bear in mind the provincial planning statement 2024 made an amendment, as I understand, to employment areas. So institutional and commercial uses are now excluded from employment areas. So we are looking at really kind of light industry, really, in Bonfield. We're not going to attract much heavy industry, or certainly if we did, it wouldn't be something that requires significant amount of water inputs because we don't have the hydrogeological basis on which to support such an operation. So that's kind of what that's indicating, that you have that designated employment focus area. Number 27 relates to the rural area. We've talked internally and now with our consultants about dividing that up into different bits, and that's a conversation for today, but we talked about having, yeah, so talk about having a, say, rural general designations. That might be like the bush where it's just like housing is the, you know, maybe some home occupation or home industry attached to that housing would be appropriate. And then having like a rural agricultural designation. So the assumption is that it's some kind of working farm. But you know, it could be a large farm down to a small farm holding. But there might be extra provisions within that designation, particularly because the PPS allows for, say, up to 2 additional detached additional dwelling units on farm properties, and that's to encourage workers, farm workers, to come and live on the farm and actually contribute to the productivity of the land. So there might be incentives and between the two, right? Depending on which designation you're in. You mentioned as well potential for a rural, say, it's a rural employment or rural commercial use. So I was making a list of this earlier today. I just figured that might be stuff like an outdoor store, a construction yard, or something like that that needs rural land, so needs space within which to accommodate its operations, but is not it's not a residential use and it's not a farm. So that's kind of where we're at right now in terms of our understanding. Any questions on that? Or?
Not trying to understand it.
So basically, the current at the moment, the rural designation, which covers the vast majority of the township, it's got a whole wide range of like different uses that are permitted.
Yeah.
Which can cause some of these land use conflicts that we've been seeing. Somebody could put up a huge warehouse next door to a home, and then it's a mismatch of planning. So if you further divide off the rural designation by different blocks, then you can start to control what happens within those designations.
Rural commercial, rural residential, rural.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's say in theory, the rural commercial could be centered around Development Road because it's got better accessibility to parts of the township.
Right.
Whereas the rural
Because it's close to the highway.
trunk, yeah. Whereas, you know, the rural general or whatever could be the southern part, like up Brandon Road and some of those kind of more rural areas.
Right.
And yet there's agricultural areas off, I believe it's a,
Trunk development.
development, box flowers.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And although that requires you to have consideration of cost for these minimum distance separation policies, which will continue to apply, so that means that any property owner in proximity to an existing barn that has livestock has to do those assessments, and similarly, if there's a farm at the moment that's in proximity to an existing dwelling and they want to put a new barn up, they too have to do an assessment because they're the ones that are changing the circumstances it is at the moment. So it's just asking to tighten up that language around land uses in the rural area. 28 is agriculture related commercial industrial use policies. That kind of goes back to the point we just made, how we could create a distinct designation for that. And he's talking more about on-farm diversified uses as well. So we know that's attractive to a lot of farmers, whether it's agri-food initiatives or agri-tourism, hospitality type uses. Which we're hearing more about. People trying to diversify what their farm does to bring in different forms of income. 4.2.3 is commercial and industrial policies. This is more generally. So talking about the community use policies rather than having them listed under hamlet settlement areas, the employment focus areas, or the rural areas. So it's very being specific in terms of where those would apply. And obviously, given the nature of some industrial activities, there's more potential for effluent to run off, there's more, into liquid wastes, wash, cooling water, and the overall scale of that development. So if it's more than say 10,000 litres of water per day, then that triggers that need for the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks to provide that approval. So it kind of overrides the Conservation Authority in that sense. But designing a system really has capacity to support that level of activity. So you got 4.3 recreational area. So the official plan permits additional residential units and existing single detached dwellings in the rural or recreational area designations. This is there. And just on that point about recreational area, the RLS, we talked about maybe potentially changing the name of that to like a waterfront designation. Because we know the lakes are not just used for recreation anymore, they are for season and they have a range of different uses, but that's something we can revisit too.
I think we've asked for what type of wording we could put in there.
Yeah, because everyone refers to it as the waterfront. You wouldn't say I'm going to the RLS.
Right.
So yeah, section. So
No, I just want to make sure we say this.
okay.
Mhm.
So as noted in comments in section 3.14, it says the MECP recommends not permitting additional residential units as of right in shoreline areas to protect water quality.
Which goes back to all the other comments that we've been talking about.
Yeah.
We still want to have those attached, but the ministry has recommended we do not. So that'll be that pushback.
So 32 continues with this.
So in 31, it's saying that does not list additional residential units as permitted. So that's going back to the same as the secondary dwelling, the same thing. Again, in this
That's
area.
this is what, yeah, where they really kind of said basically no development. So that's where we would want to push back to say, so long as we can demonstrate its capacity in the septic system and we follow best management practices, there wouldn't be any negative impact in terms of the lake and water quality that we could have an additional dwelling unit. That's what probably best we can get.
Yeah, because the others will be the footprint.
Yeah. So 32 lots with water frontage. So this talks a bit more about protecting, improving or restoring the quality and quantity of water by implementing necessary restrictions. And specifically policies regarding Lake Nosbonsing, Talon Lake, and Kyboscon Bay. Because they're all at capacity.
Yeah, and asking us to do that in a vacuum when we share the lakes with other municipalities, that's the job of the conservation authority, in my opinion. They're supposed to have consistent policies.
But
What- Sorry, go ahead.
no, there's a section in here that says like the 4.3.1.3 on existing parcels of record and new lots, the minimum setbacks of all buildings and structures. With the exception of blah, 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 not like the works, the pump houses, of the non-habitable structures. Less than 10 square meters, less shall be 30 meters from the normal ordinary water's edge. And boathouses, docks can be less considered, and so it kind of gives us a little bit more flexibility in there. But this is one of the things that we brought back, with there's just inconsistent,
Yeah,
inconsistencies in the, so.
So who crossed out Lake Nosvin,
They
St.
did.
Allen and so are they just meaning in general then, on any ordinary water's edge, they haven't
the 30
restricted it?
setback. But that's in line with the point below, which talks about having this natural vegetated buffer, and that is a best practice standard all across the province. And so like there might be ways that we can work with property owners, and we'd love to initiate more stewardship committees at the local level on different lakes that they take responsibility for vegetating the shorelines and helping therefore improve the water quality over time. But that's probably one for the next council to
So
got enough to do this year.
that's a, more or less stating it out for the existing waterfront lots then. Giving it the 30 meters, or am I reading that wrong?
Yes, you wouldn't be able to put a septic within 30 meters.
Yeah.
Not just because of the capacity, but also because you're supposed to maintain the shoreline.
Yeah. But we brought back that this is just inconsistent. So when we're saying the 120, most of our lots, all of our lakes are at capacity, and you can't sever them. So all of them essentially have lots of record. So why are we saying 120, 300, and then saying 30, and we just asked them to clean up that some of the language. Make it easier for everyone reading this without planning technical backgrounds to be able to understand.
Because what would be the current setback?
So you.
It
Yeah.
always was. Okay.
Yeah. Always was.
Yep.
All right, so number 33, lots without water frontage. So for cases where back lots are within 30 meters of the shore, an additional policy is recommended. Again, refers to this being capacity limits. So it's really to prevent people trying to sever off the back portions, I guess, and achieve development within that threshold. Number 34 is public access to the waterfront. So it's saying that the Park Planning Act does provide details on the implementation of parkland dedication policies. So as you know, whenever new lot is created, we do, in accordance with the formula, we do receive some monies from property owners, which goes into a designated fund and is applied towards parkland initiatives. Maybe again, it's one for the next council, but at some point maybe there will be. No, but I mean, in terms of like an evaluation of what are their priority projects, and so I know like the recreation committee has discussed it and it's maybe buried in minutes, but I just don't know if there's an actual, an up-to-date plan about what the municipality would spend its parkland contributions on. It might be something just to tidy that up. So 4.4 aggregate removal area. This relates to mineral aggregate resources. So again, in terms of resources, it's not the Ring of Fire. We don't have all of this lithium and cobalt and God knows what. We're not going to have global investors knocking on the door. But we do have sand and gravel resources, which are, you know, some of it is tier 1, which is considered very desirable for construction, and we do need some of those resources to build out the housing and all the other stuff moving forward. So this seeks to really ensure that there's protections in place, that those resources are not being hindered in any way by development in adjoining properties, which would somehow prevent further expansion of those operations from taking place. Is that right? And it also talks about the need for comprehensive rehabilitation. So if anybody is looking to expand or do works on or apply for an alternate change of use of those kind of properties, then it does trigger that need for studies / plans to come into effect so that that land can be made safe and clean and all the rest. So then you have 36 provincial parks and conservation reserves. So it refers to the Ministry of Natural Resources Natural Heritage Reference Manual. This is us ANSI, so the area of natural scientific interest, non-crown land complement provincial parks and conservation reserves. So we do have the Mattawa River Provincial Park, so an ANSI is not that. It's kind of just an area that's, as we mentioned, is sort of designated for its perceived value, if you like, in terms of natural heritage. So it's just wanted us to kind of recognize and tighten that language up too. And it also talks about the township notifying the Ontario Parks Algonquin Zone Office prior to approving any development proposals within 120 meters of the provincial park. So I'll be making sure that they're added to our consultation list as well. For not that we've had that many applications north of Highway 17, and certainly not now anyway. So 4.5 environmental service areas. This refers to cemeteries and sewage waste disposal sites. So that says that they're not natural heritage features. Believe it or not, the other plan must have suggested it
Waste
was.
disposal sites or
You don't want to
natural
spend the day
heritage at some
there.
point, yeah.
Get your binoculars out. But to be consistent with PPS 3.5 land use compatibility, the MECP recommends the official plan policies indicate the separation distance has been required. So we've made initial inquiries of the ministry about what was the status of these cemeteries and why did they have the environmental protection designation in place for them. They've asked me to say something. We have to do an FOI request to get that information, so that's on the list to do.
If I can put this into a real world example, so there is a cemetery in Bonham and somebody had a property beside it and he wanted to build a house. And the official plan, and we couldn't get the province to budge, they're not going to. He wanted to build a house on the property beside the cemetery. Cemetery is guarded by 500 meters. So he couldn't build the house because there's a cemetery next to him. And we're like, this is counterintuitive. Row homes faster, but you can't build a home beside the cemetery because it has this. So in the end, we had to make sure that the well was a certain distance, that there was some study that was done to show that there was no groundwater influence on that property, so it required additional requirements for the homeowner, but that's a real road.
Is it because of groundwater
Yeah.
is the concern? Like if there
But
was
it's
municipally
from the
provided
cemetery.
water, it wouldn't have been an issue?
Correct.
Okay.
But
Cause I'm like, they're all over the place in urban areas. Okay.
There in the farm that my mom and dad owned, there's 3 graves on there. And someone else owned.
Yeah,
that. Well, I'm the only one that knows it's there.
Not anymore.
But- You guys don't know where it is.
I can
But
remember
it's a big dispute over it. And because my mom didn't want them digging there, right? And then there was a big fight with the people in Toronto, and then they said people own the place out there.
yes,
Fence it all in and everything. I don't know that, I know where it is, but I don't think there's anybody else. My mom knew, her family knew. It's safe there, nobody bothers it, they've been resting there for 90 years and they're still there, or 100 years, but you don't know where you're gonna find a cemetery in this area.
No, that's the thing.
it's like, you know,
Buy a piece of property and all of a sudden,
Leave it alone, but as long as nobody ever digs there, once I'm gone, nobody will know where it is.
but then the developer will come and he will dig and he will
Oh, you
pull
little
human
bitch.
bones and then
it's an
it becomes.
archaeological.
Yeah, and then they-
I'll draw a little circle on the map and you'll know.
God forbid it become a dinosaur bone and then, okay.
Oh, geez, no. Although I prefer dinosaur.
Yeah, dinosaur.
Build a museum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All
Run
right.
that.
All right, so 38 is development constraints. So the draft OP moved hazards into section 5 of the OP, and the ministry recommends that other policies also be moved. And it's referring to Schedule B, the natural cultural heritage, and back to the archaeological potential points. So it's talking really about the schedules and making sure they reflect the wording of the plan, right? 39 is water resources and provincially designated vulnerable areas. So from section 4.2 of the provincial planning statement. Need to ensure meaningful long-term planning for the source of drinking water, that they're protected. The designated vulnerable areas are identified, and any restricted areas due to their hydraulic function promoted. And again, it refers back to the Ontario Source Protection Atlas as a resource that we can reference, which we will be referencing to make sure that policy is robust. So the proposed draft wording here as well on the right hand side. So I didn't have any issue with that, and I don't believe the consultants did either. So we will adopt that as is.
There's more and more news stories about communities going dry and drought happening, so it's really about protecting these aquifers for the long term. Again, this is a 50-year plan, but Bonneville's gonna exist past those 50 years, so we have to protect those areas. Or at least manage those.
Yep. So point 40 goes back to natural heritage again. Referring to significant wetlands, the ANSIs, the wildlife habitat. It mentions the Matterhorn River Provincial Park, Boulder Depot Creek Conservation Reserve. And it just references that maybe an emphasis in the first draft in terms of habitat, significant wildlife habitat would, it seems it must have been on birds, and it's saying you need to recognize other species, different forms of bats, other significant wildlife, and make sure that there's sufficient habitat protection in place for them. Standard stuff. Talks a bit. Their policy wording recommendation goes a little bit more into the fish habitat side of stuff. Specifically mentioning Lake Nosbon, saying Turtle Lake, Talon Lake, Pine Lake, and Froggy Lake as having significant fish habitat. And some of the creeks obviously is for just spawning locations. And just recommends the bit about consulting with organizations such as Fisheries and Oceans Canada. And again mentions that about the 300 meters of Trout Lake. To have controls in place to prevent development and site alteration to minimize any effects on those fish habitats.
They didn't do any amendments within the official plan, so they didn't do any writing within the draft official plan?
So that all this on the right hand side is.
Yes.
their
So
which
no,
they
I
did.
mean, like, in the attached,
They didn't merge.
no, so that's just how we sent it in.
That's right.
Anybody else need 5 minutes? Do you want a 5-minute break, or you guys are welcome to keep going?
I could use the washroom too.
Okay,
Shall I-
we'll just we will take a 5-minute break.
Okay.
It just maybe just hit you.
Okay.
We'll be back in 5 minutes. For the people that are watching.
Okay, welcome back. So carrying on now, with number,
Just a moment, yeah. There's still dialogue on there. I'm not sure if it's.
okay,
Oh,
it's there.
okay.
Yeah. So number 41, relates to development policies for capacity lakes, so it's back to that point again. Saying it's be consistent with PPS, it's recognizing that all lands located within the lake Nosbonsing and Talon Lake watersheds are connected by surface and groundwater drainage, and that all the uses in these watersheds directly or indirectly influence the water quality and quantity of Lake Nosbonsing and Talon Lake, including Carbon Scotland Bed. It does reference as well, the MECP is aware that Lake Nosbonsing has been subject to some harmful algal blooms, hypoxic and anoxic conditions, phosphorus levels which have impaired water quality. And it refers to the ministry's policies and guidelines from 1994, which probably need updating too, but assesses the shoreline development capacity, and that's what they've done. They've applied this lakeshore capacity model. But they did note as well that previous studies and monitoring as far back as the 1970s have indicated that there is poor water quality in Lake Nosbonsing. And that is a combination. It's been some unauthorized developments taking place, but also the natural way in which the lake is. It's a shallow lake and it's not easy for it's phosphorus to kind of turn.
Will be warming.
Yeah. So yeah, that's why it's suggested some recommendations in the policies there on the right hand side, areas for improvement. 114.2, which is natural hazards. So it's recommended to separate out natural and human-made hazards, which makes sense. So natural hazards might be areas like flood, erosion slopes, or the potential for wildfire, etc. Human-made hazards could be due to human-made matters affecting different properties. It talks also about this idea of a two-zone concept. So we weren't immediately familiar with this, but within a flood plain, let's say, you'd have an area which is susceptible to flooding, and then you'd have an area that is a fringe of that. So in more of an extreme flooding event, the fringe area would flood, but if it's just your regular week in, week out, that area is going to pull up water, that's the flood area. So we don't know how that could be applied practically. We're assuming some of this is going to come forward with whatever happens with the Conservation Authority and or this new provincial Conservation Authority, that they'll have more development friendly policy, let's say, that which take into account this two-zone concept. But it's premature for us because we don't know what that means, and we need to know to put it in the mapping as well, so that we can be clear about the advice we're giving to property owners.
If I can give a real world example, I know we don't want to go through, but so there was a property that was on the lake that wanted to build, the mapping for flooding changed, so there's nothing that we can do with that, but that changed. They used the 100 Timmins, which changed when he bought the property, when he got the building permit, it changed where the floodplain was. So North Bay Mountain Conservation, with an engineering study that the owner had to do, he was actually able to build within that flood fringe. North Bay Mountain Conservation doesn't do a two-zone right now. Again, like we said, maybe at some point they may, so we can put policies in that give us those permits. But they do look at each property and then do this necessary study to see what we can do to help those property owners. That's one of the examples.
Yeah. So a driveway might be acceptable in the flood fringe, but a property wouldn't, because you're not going to build a home that's going to flood. That kind of approach. So yeah, the language talks a bit about a natural hazards constraint area under private ownership. It's got again some wording regarding flooding and erosion and steep slopes. Talks about the need to engage with the North Bay Mountain Conservation Authority to obtain Section 28 permit under the Conservation Authorities Act. And it's got a whole range of policies there about the flood mapping the two zones. So we didn't have any concerns really about this. actually seems like a proactive policy, I would say, really, to potentially break down that floodplain and look at is it significant or not in particular locations. So 43 is a human-made hazard, so it's the other side of the coin that they mentioned. So it's talking about potential, abandoned mine hazard sites. We don't believe there are any abandoned mines in Bonfield.
Unless the
Maybe now
mayor
he
knows about any.
About that.
Is there, about any abandoned mines that nobody else knows about?
No, I don't know that.
All right.
I'm not telling any more secrets.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, that shouldn't really apply here, but it's still, you have to have some types of policies in case of a what if, and that could be a what if that we could stumble across a former, maybe unauthorized mineral or mine site. But it's also, the potential for contamination arising from human activities is talking about. So, waste disposal sites, potentially contaminated sites. And particular reference to the Bonfield waste disposal site, which I didn't know, but it has a 500-meter buffer around it. I just got off the circuit. I didn't know it was 500 meters, but it's so nothing would really change there. But that's subject to its own regulations and standards, which we're just replicating here in this document. But it does say, where some of those issues might be encountered, that a study will be prepared by a qualified professional engineer and may be required to determine the status of the hazard site, the nature of the hazard, and any risks to public health and safety. As a former industrial site, a proposed change on the site to a more sensitive use may require the filing of a record of site condition. It refers you to a separate section, the potentially contaminated sites. So that would be standard. If you're taking a employment site where somebody's been dumping chemicals into the ground for years, you'd want to know that the condition of that ground is safe before you put a residential use on them. Any questions on that one? Doing good. Number 44, sand and gravel resource areas. So again, just yeah, it's saying the need to avoid duplication of policies. I'm recommending to delete policy 3 and replace it with definitions for adjacent lands. It refers back to this the aggregate resources inventory paper. I managed to print a copy of that off. I think that was from like 80s or something. But that's when there must be funding at the time, and they did this whole geological study, if you like, of particularly Northern Ontario in this area to see, what minerals and what resources were, and that's where some of this original kind of mapping came from. So that's when it was determined that Bonfield had sand and gravel reserves. And it's carried on through the plans, everything. Excellent. 45, cultural heritage resources. So it's saying the need to ensure consistency with the Ontario Heritage Act and the Ministry of Citizenship and Multiculturalism's cultural heritage policies and procedures. So yeah, it seems to primarily relate to archaeological resources to this point. Just we don't have any significant cultural heritage sites or archaeological this time, so it's policy would be in there, but it needn't necessarily apply. 46 relates to transport. Yeah.
Has anybody received a report of how much phosphorus levels and all that have gone up, like say over the last 15 years?
We
Is
haven't
there a
received
report?
one comprehensive report that does that, but we do receive annual reports from the health unit on the condition of the lake. So if we pull them together into one report, then it would say for the last 7 years there's been an increase in frequency and intensity of algal blooms. That's what I've on Lake Nosbonsons.
Yeah, blooms. I'm talking about like phosphorus levels, and like I know one of the associations does
Yeah.
testing.
Yeah, it's where we need to go. So Hutchinson Environmental Consultants did a study of Lake Nosbonsing for the municipality of East Ferris. They did different bits, including some of the watershed areas that fall within Bonfield's jurisdiction. but they didn't get all the way up here into the kind of the hamlet basin. So subject to council approval and or funding, or if we can get a grant or something like that, there would be an opportunity to do some additional water sampling in this area here to kind of top up that original study to
Yeah.
understand, you know, what has it changed, what are the phosphorus levels, and then we'd have a greater evidence base. to-
Yeah, because it's, you know, we're being so, there's so many things in place. But I haven't seen where they've said in the last 10 years, they've elevated significantly.
Yeah, we can retrieve that.
Yeah.
They have, but I've seen every year the conservation, the health unit puts out the flags that there's, and you have to close
Yeah,
the
there's
beach.
algae, yeah,
Yeah,
but
so we
I'm,
know it's there. It's just,
Yeah.
has it been written up in the report?
yeah, like,
Yeah.
you know, say you're talking about a talent or whatever, yeah, have levels increase, that's,
Yeah,
yeah.
no,
If
that's,
there's any document.
To make decision based off the science would be nice, is what you're saying,
Yeah.
yeah.
yes.
Off the breath.
No, that's-
We were talking with a couple universities because there is no comprehensive study. So we were talking to a few of the universities to see
Yeah.
if we could get them to come in to do those studies. Because then that would go hand in hand, create the evidence that we need to make these decisions, but right now we just have to rely on the ones that
Yeah.
exist.
Mhm.
one of them was the University of Waterloo, and we were just waiting to have a student that's actually from Northern Ontario, so that they, you know, live with parents and be able to work with us. Otherwise,
Mhm.
it's difficult for them to convince people to come up here. So Nipissing University, we're also actively working with them. They were one of the presenters at the Agri-Food Forum, and they have a whole team of people that's doing that. They have access to grant funding too. It's maybe something we've initiated those conversations. We'll probably need to loop back, touch base, and say, are we doing this? And when? Okay, so the 46 is the MT transportation, so it's everything from provincial highways to township roads to snowmobile trails. The ministry has really emphasized again that there'll be no new access points off the provincial highways. Couldn't really service multiple lots from single access points. There was one file last year, which was a lot of correspondence going back and forth on that. The applicant got their way, and 2 of the lots are being serviced off one, but I'm not sure the MTO will bend so much anymore. They want to minimize the number of access and egress points for highway safety reasons, really. And then where proposed recreational trails are intended to traverse the provincial highway, the proposed crossing will require the prior approval of the Ministry of Transportation. So, as you know, there are some crossing points probably in there for years. No more is the same. You need to keep the ones that you've got and maintain them so there's not that impact on the highway.
Because sometimes you hear the opposite where they want, you know, trails and that sort of thing, and then here they're kind of saying, we're gonna,
Yeah, and we talked about this at the
Restrict.
previous meeting, and then again, that might be another exercise perhaps for future council. It might tie into this whole parkland strategy that I mentioned previously, but can we look at that? Like, what municipal road allowances do we have? What are these assets, like these conservation reserves, and how do we tie that together as part of a trail network? And that would be an interesting, maybe there's partners that we could work with that would do that work. We don't have to do it for discovery routes or others, right? But that might be something to look at moving forward. So new development proposed on adjacent lands to existing or planned township roads and co-linear infrastructure should be compatible with. And not minimize. Now we're the opposite, really. We don't want multiple dwellings being served on the same access point on townships. We want the legal distinction between that's your driveway, that's your access to your property, because we know it's caused problems, some of the past incidences of people using shared driveways. And continues to.
Okay, sometimes it works.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, the snowmobiles, there is a network in town. We do consult with snowmobile club. They haven't had any comments yet, so we'll see. Number 47. So we're getting towards the end of this. It's the implementation and interpretation. So this is the bit where it mentions that an official plan, when it's new, as this would be proposed to be, it need not be reviewed for another 10 years. If it were to be just an update by amendment, then it would need to be reviewed again in 5 years. I believe people would be interested, as we're doing all this work anyway, and all these policies are fresh, that we go for 10 years and give ourselves a break for 10 years, but that will be determined.
It sounded like there was some consensus to that around the table to recommend that, but I guess we can have that conversation as we get down
Yeah,
the finer points now.
okay. So number 48, community improvement.
Maybe, oh, sorry.
yeah.
We could say the benefits of new or amended.
Yeah, the benefits of the new is that there's less work to get to be more and more consultation engagement with the update than there would with the new plan as we're informed. It's easier to get this passed as new than,
Then amended.
yeah, which makes no sense.
Makes no sense,
Yeah.
and it's, we're going through, the entire thing, to your point. Seems pretty new to me.
Okay, so 7.2 refers to community improvement. So this is a provincial interests listed in the Planning Act includes accessibility for persons with disabilities. And it's also referring to the purpose and scope of the plan, the built form, public spaces about vibrancy, mitigating the effects of climate change, greenhouse gas reduction, and adding 2 new objectives to the list for community improvement plans. Whereas it might be to prepare for the impacts of changing climate and supporting Bonfield's strategic plan, as well as to promote accessibility and accessible housing. I don't know if you want to speak to your point when you talk about community improvement plan on housing, don't you realize that?
Yeah, that might be a future plan, but I did ask when we were talking to the consultant about this, right now our official plan only designates industrial or commercial that we can put site plan control or say, community improvement plans in. And in order, if we wanted to do a community improvement plan to allow some incentive for housing or to do anything, then we would have to do an official plan amendment. So I did ask them if they could just give council that flexibility and make the entire community, the entire township eligible for a CFP. So, and I've seen that in lots of other official plans, so then we can just create a community improvement plan that kind of just speaks to whatever initiative council wants to have, not just for commercial and industrial.
Or just for the hamlets, and it all depends on the
Just-
focus,
yeah.
yeah. With the
So just having
account
it broad, it opens up potential. Doesn't mean you will have a CIP, but if you don't say you are going to have a CIP in your official plan, then you can't without doing the official plan.
yeah.
Right.
So the recommendation is, I would say, to include reference to a community improvement plan of sorts, if you wish to advance that moving forward.
50 is the same thing for site plan control right now, it's just in the section, and I would rather be wide open.
Yeah,
Um,
about the community plan permit.
in the site plan control.
Oh.
Sorry. That's what-
Okay, I just finished off that, that's so similar to the community improvement plan, so that would be where you're looking to achieve a specific objective, right? It's regeneration, it's just. You've got to focus on that, you create the plan, and then you can leverage that potential to get funding of some kind. In this sense, the community planning permit system, this is a new way of doing planning, if you like. It's actually much more like the English system and a hell of a lot more simplified than this. It sort of combines the official plan and zoning bylaw into one comprehensive document. Then you have the staff would be more delegation of powers, if you like, to work directly with the landowner to say, is this development appropriate or not? It might be less of a focus in terms of the mathematics of setbacks and more kind of looking at how does this development, how does it contribute to good planning? That's the test really. So it's a different system, but some municipalities have found there's more streamlined, it's more efficient, there's less paperwork. I'm an advocate of it, as you can probably tell, but that would probably require us to do a whole new, maybe in 5 years.
No, it just gives you, we have to put that, we can
Yeah.
have that ability in the official plan in order for us to create that system.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
but then,
over the next 50 years, we may want to create that system.
yeah,
Because it is far simpler, to do it, it's
but
just,
But it might be in 5 years' time, if you did an interim review, then you'd structure the plan a bit differently around what that community plan, because it'd have to be structured different to allow different provisions.
Let
Yeah,
me,
but on an overall, you can just allow it and then create the policy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you gotta have in there for now to say if you have any interest in doing.
is there a municipality that in our area that is kind of working from a community improvement plan?
Yeah, so I believe Lake of Bays has either implemented it, I was working towards it, and the town of Huntsville. Those are two lines on,
One might have started, but they're doing better.
yeah.
It's a new.
Concept?
Yeah. I think it's only been around maybe 7 years.
Yeah, so
So the uptick on it hasn't been great.
Mhm.
So in terms of a site plan control, so yeah, on section 50, again, it's saying it's not conform to all the current provisions of section 41 regarding that. So it suggests a section of the OP be updated to ensure it applies to development. So the OP currently states that the municipality may delegate site plan approval to staff, however, require the municipality to appoint an officer, employee, or agent to do so. So it's just about tightening up the who is responsible for if those powers has been delegated. So 51 applies to public meetings and public consultation. So it references different elements of what we do in planning. So the official plan I'm doing right now, the zoning bylaws, plan of subdivision, consents. And it's just really emphasizing it shall notify and engage with the public for prescribed contacts. So it's just tightening up the process, which we're required to follow anyway under the Planning Act. 7.52 relates to Indigenous engagement and consultation. It's saying that we can do more to engage with different facets, if you like, of the Algonquins of Ontario, which is broken down into different First Nation groups in this list here, which may have a stake or interest in land holdings, but it's also good to, for them to relate to different groups, and perhaps that for us to deal directly with one group being the Algonquins of Ontario. So we need to figure out what those pathways for communication, so we're gathering people's feedback, but we're not just spreading information far and wide and confusing everyone in the process.
We spoke with the consultants that we would send a letter to each of these named groups and just say, are you interested? And when Quantville has a proposal, because typically it's just the Algonquins who would write back to us. So we said that we would write to them and see if they want us to give it to them. A lot of the time, the letters go ignored.
Yeah. So 53 relates to property maintenance and occupancy standards bylaw, which we briefly mentioned before, but it also talks here specifically about the Ontario's Invasive Species Act. It's saying that the term we've used is pretty vague, being weeds, which is not a clear term, and it should instead be non-native and/or invasive species. That's the term the province prefers.
Which seems more vague than weeds, but okay.
And so the number 54 relates to environmental impact studies rather than statements that they suggested. So it refers to the Natural Heritage Reference Manual, which lists environmental impact studies as the type of study required to determine the impacts of development on the natural environment. So this would come into effect where wildlife habitat that is known to be of significance in this eco-region that we're in eco-region 5E, in case anybody wondered. And so the Ontario Wetlands Evaluation System is one mechanism. We saw reference to that in the plan of subdivision. So that was one method by which they did that evaluation of the lands to determine its ecological significance or not. Obviously, you can go deeper in that. There's you can do preliminary screening for species at risk. It all depends on the site, the context, the whether the landscape is suitable habitat or not. So some of the wording in this to the right hand side again, it just tries to really emphasize the process by which that information would be gathered in the application process. Talks about scoped EISs. So it's like a first step towards doing a full environmental impact study. And then it mentions the full site environmental impact study as being another method. So that would certainly depend if we knew that a site was contaminated and it was bordering a wetland, then that's going to trigger those kind of conversations. 55, do I do that one pre-application? Consultation and prescribed information. The Planning Act does set out, and they made some changes to this prior to Christmas again, to try and make it a little bit easier for applicants. So where I believe they're referred to as like registered, prepared by a qualified professional. So then if that person, so it could be a licensed engineer or architect or any other qualified professional that's providing advice, then that can be sufficient. Sometimes it might prevent the need for more detailed studies, just be an opinion, a letter of opinion or something. Depends on the circumstance. And then any such information studies and any peer reviews that may be required shall be at the expense of the applicant and proponent. So that would be standard. We don't pay for people to would be bonusing if other people are benefiting from us paying for the cost of their studies if they're the proponent and they're responsible for their studies. So a whole list of potential studies is put here, from archaeological assessments to conservation plans, aggregate resource studies, agricultural soils assessment and system studies, environmental impact studies, species at risk assessment, environmental site assessment, records of site condition, erosion plans, slope stability analysis, floodplain analysis, fish habitat studies, traffic impact studies, geotechnical studies, groundwater impact assessments, natural heritage system studies, noise feasibility studies, risk management plans, servicing option report, stormwater management plans, grading and drainage plans, landscaping plans, surface water impact assessments, terrain analysis studies, land use compatibility assessments, visual impact assessments, and methane gas leachate migration assessments. So just before anybody panics, you wouldn't ask for any or all of that necessarily. It would be very site specific in terms of which of those studies applies, but this would give us the mechanism by which to ask for that study in the first place. That's why.
Gina, do you want to take the shot at the Conservation Authority, or do you want me to? Because this seems like the right time to do it.
You go, you talk to the guy.
I mean, if they're asking us to do this, it'd be nice if the Conservation Authority would follow the same suit, so.
Okay, so that's the list. But if you think any more, then feel free to add to it.
A question, though, is there going to, like, say, if someone has to have an assessment or a report, is there gonna be something like defined for the community of when it would be required, or like?
I asked the exact same question. Like, I don't want to interrupt, but
No,
when we were going through the list, it says we may, and it depends, but how do we ensure that we're asking the right studies to be done for the right development or the right properties? And there is no prescribed form. There is no prescribed, like, this is what you shall do. And they said it will be completely up to every site or what development.
So we run the risk of being prohibitive
Right.
if we ask for too much. If it's not, like, it's like.
yeah, like,
Yeah.
you know, like people could take this, okay, they've gone beyond the requirements.
Oh, we get that, right? When we
Yeah,
ask.
like,
the
is it
guy that wanted
expensive?
the house beside the cemetery, you know, of course he's upset that we're asking for an environmental impact. But the policy says, and we couldn't get anyone to grade that line, so he had to do the study, so we get it all the time. And there's always the perception that we can ask one property owner, but we won't ask another property owner, but it depends on the site, right? So typically when we get into those situations where we're like not exactly sure what to ask, we call our consultants. And we say, okay, so here's the plan, and we have a meeting with them and we say, this is what we know of the development, so what should we be asking for?
Mhm.
And then, so we get advice from the experts, because we don't know.
Because we want to be flexible, but you know, if we don't
Yeah.
ask for it, then we'd be assuming liability, really, not having asked for it in the first place.
So who's the consultants that you guys were?
Jim Richards.
Yeah.
We typically
So-
go to J.L. Richards, at times we used to go to Tom Phillip too. J.L. Richards is one, because they're active in leadership planning.
Apart from, you know, this past couple of years, but in the past, have they always been on record to be a consultant for the
Not
township?
J.L. Richards.
No.
I think they've had different consulting teams.
I'm just curious how the process is work. So how about the building department? Do they make recommendations? On, for example, if you have a development that, you know, can impact. Well, a lot of these, noise feasibility and all those other things, right? If you have a. You know, not here in rural, but in the hamlet, you'll, let's say, a business that is operating at night. So obviously that makes sense to make noise impact study if they're gonna be grinding their gears and people are sleeping, right? So is the building department right now aware of all these and are they making recommendations as they see fit?
So when a building permit or a development permit comes into the building department, there is a form that the applicant has to fill out for the planning department. And then it lists, you know, all the setbacks, the dimensions and what they're doing. And then the planning department has to sign off on that building permit.
Right,
Yeah.
So that's when the check and balance comes in.
okay, so basically it's between yourself and the
Yeah, we-
building department that you
You go
guys.
back and forth to each other's office all the
Awesome.
time on
Right
the
on.
files.
Yeah, I'm just curious how that process looks like.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we're down to the last one.
Yeah, land divisions, this relates to both the creation of new consent, so whether it's consent and subdivision or condominium, council being the granting authority in this case, or those cases. It's just asking us to review again section on plan of subdivision and section on plan of condominium and the country estate subdivision policies to ensure the distinction between them are clear. It's saying a parkland dedication requires a bylaw and a park plan, which we mentioned in the RP. So I got that point earlier that. I believe that we do have a plan, we have the active living waterfront master plan, so there's a plan that satisfies this.
Mhm.
But is there something more comprehensive we could do in the township? I don't know. So yeah, demonstration that there is sufficient capacity for waste, both sewage and household from the appropriate environmental compliance approval. And that there's sufficient capacity for water services. So that's the key issues that we keep coming back to, right? Can lands be developed in a safe and sanitary way without causing any further environmental effects? And then there were some supplementary comments that were, is that the one page of that? So, I don't know if we need to go into detail on it, it just says it's actual just straight up wording, it's the proposed revisions to draft RP section 5.7. Cultural heritage resources, so. It's
Set up the.
this one, it's sort of like with the email, and after that email, it should be after that.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, last one.
So really, they've just, we've covered a lot of this ground already, they've just actually gone ahead and written out the wording for us.
It goes with number 45.
Yeah,
Okay, oh, and MMH did this as well.
they did, yeah, so.
Yeah. And
And when there's a cross out on this form, who ended up doing that?
That's all.
so no.
It's all them, so they typed it and then took it someone else.
Well, it could be that they've either crossed it themselves or they've taken our version where somebody else had already crossed it out,
Yes,
just used that
yeah.
as a template and then added.
Okay,
Oh, so yeah, but they've created those.
We did not modify this document is straight from.
from them, yes.
Yeah.
And they did not modify the director.
So obviously in your package, you all had a copy of the draft official plan as well. And it's highlighted, sorry, this was the submitted version. So I highlighted section in here as they were referenced in this table to try and make it a little bit easier.
Okay, so when I see highlights, you've done.
Yeah, the
Okay.
way you see highlights
Yeah.
in there, where they referred to specific sections, I went through and highlighted it just to draw your attention to it, make it easier.
Just going back to page 19 for just a second, there's just a question where it says the bottom new development within 300 meters. Were you saying Talon had a 300 meter?
Yes.
Number 5,
So which page did you say?
19, page 19.
Okay, so yeah, I think it's point 19.
And like you said, we can get back to you with questions and
Yeah.
we go through it.
Because Talon's recognized as being a trout lake. Lake trout lake, yeah.
A lake that has trout.
So
Yeah.
new development for the 300 meter, does that include an existing lot too then?
Means if you want to put a house on the existing lot.
As
Have
they're
to do
saying,
that.
that is what they're saying, yeah.
That's
No,
what they're saying, but
This is what
yeah.
we're gonna try and push back against, to maintain secondary units or whatever, and to allow lots that have been created on record to be developed.
Okay,
They might tell us that we need to do more studies and assessment to demonstrate why that's possible.
Yeah.
So there
Mhm.
might be a delay in that even happening, but it's a point of discussion.
a discussion.
Like further on in that policy, like there's other things where, like the existing developed parcels of record, their sewage has to be 30 meters. So it keeps going through, but essentially, if you are on any of the lakes and you want to develop within that 300 meters, you have to do an environmental impact study
Yeah.
before we can give you a host permit.
So you're saying right now, if you want an environmental, a whole environmental study? What's the cost of that?
How much you-
Yeah.
So I've
Like,
seen them-
would we need a whole, would you need that?
Well, if there was 3 or 4 adjoining vacant lots, it might make sense for them to club together and assess that on one go and split the cost. But
But I'm just talking like
yeah,
people own individual lakefront
Yeah.
lots, so you're saying a whole environmental study?
we're not saying that, I mean, yes, yeah.
Well, I didn't know that they. That they stated
They're doing another part.
Oh, in a section. it says-
in another, do you
Yeah.
know that section they're saying? That's
We'll find it.
We can find it and send it to the highlighted in a minute.
But yeah, when you look at the different bits between them all, that's what it amounted to.
I think we better go talk to our MPP.
It's, this is not great news for many on the law thing. I mean, maybe great news, so, from an environmental standpoint. I'm sure, looking at from this, I always want to balance it. But
Yes,
from property owners standpoint, this is very restrictive to those that have or are looking for. Waterfront property.
they're trying to sell.
Did this one?
It's still on page 19
Yeah.
and it's number 5.
Yeah, I just found it at the same time.
So it says new development or intensification, so new development is a house. Or intensification within 300 meters of the shorelines of Athabasca Lake should require the completion of environmental studies. Demonstrating that the site alteration or development will not negatively impact the water or fish.
So in that case, it'd be a scope TIS, you do that first to determine what is this gonna still have that, what will the potential impacts, and then we narrow that down. Like if it's just one issue, then you do a specialist study on that issue, in this case, the fish habitat. But if this is several issues, then that's what you'd do in the context of a broader environmental impact.
Interesting the word should instead of shall too, though.
We've asked for consistent learning.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because it's just putting us into trouble, but.
yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Anything else?
We can further discuss that.
Yeah,
We can discuss it, but we will try our best to advocate for responsible development as much as possible.
right.
Well, and we're in one point asking for housing and that sort of thing, and then in some areas, they've just added.
Well, in the
Big
waterfront,
dollars.
in the rural, in the hamlet, or.
So it's what happened to that.
That
That act, yeah,
Build homes cost yard?
yeah.
But there's many.
Reduce red tape.
There's
There
many-
are struggles with the oxymorons of what is like on the ground, this is what it is.
There's an act for everything.
Yeah.
And they all,
Cancel each
you have
other.
to balance them all and
Okay, well, that was a great big chunk of work, so thanks to the committee. I'll also say that thanks to Nikki and Simon. Obviously, you guys have done significant amount of work and showed tonight, so thank you for that. Appreciate you coming with that. Appreciate you preparing the committee with the reports you sent us and including the highlighting for easy reference to
Yeah,
to make it in, so I appreciate that, so. I do have a motion to go along with this, just to basically accept it. But I do see next steps and timeframes. I think we discussed that a little bit earlier, but perhaps if in the next
yeah,
meeting, you could just come forward with what the next, I don't know about. Timeframes might be tough, where you can best estimate timeframes, great, where you can't, at least if we can understand the step-by-step process as
Right.
to, once this is complete, or when this is getting close to complete, we'll start this process, that kind of piece would be
Yeah.
helpful, just a bit of a Gantt chart or something.
there's at least another month of reading. There's another binder with all the supplementary studies, and then we're gonna need to go back and forth with the
Yeah.
consultant and bring some of these
Yeah,
concerns
for
forward,
sure.
so that's next month.
Okay, so discussion on municipal housing, one window review, update the ongoing review, so the motion is the planning advisory committee accepts this update on the ongoing review of the township of Bonfield's official plan. And that this report also be forwarded to members of council for their further review and consideration. Can I get a mover in a second? Was your hand up?
I was thinking, I didn't hear the motion, so.
It says that the planning advisory committee accepts this update on the ongoing review of the township of Bonfield's official plan. And that this report also be forwarded to the members of the council for their further review and consideration.
So what are they reviewing?
Same thing we just did.
Oh, so the same thing, but
Yeah.
we're also continuing. with the
Absolutely.
PAC. Okay.
And I
So
think
already
you're
in
gonna
there.
see I think what you're gonna see in March is a joint meet, well, we're talking about a joint meeting. of The broader group, so that we won't have to pay for consultant once.
Could
The
I-
mayor doesn't like us to pay for a consultant twice.
They say that we should have, meetings with the indigenous groups. Right?
Yeah, they were saying we're
We
gonna,
sent they have received the official plan, the draft official plan, we keep informing them. But we don't have any feedback from them. I think we did get feedback on the draft
Yeah.
before we submitted it to the province. So they did give us, but we haven't got anything back on the province one. So when we have our statutory meeting, we have that 90-day statutory meeting notice period that we have to give, so they will receive that final copy.
were you willing to second?
Yes,
I'll read it one more time. Moved by member Paquette, seconded by member Langwa, that the planning advisory committee accepts this update on the ongoing review of the township of Bonfield's official plan. And that this report also be forwarded to members of council for their further review and consideration. All in favor? That's carried.
so, what we're gonna do is, the next meeting is with the consultant. If we have any questions, we can send them in
Yeah,
to Simon.
yes, please. Yeah, I think that would be.
And, oh, you're gonna post the official plan when you have a chance?
We can do, yeah.
Yeah.
At least
This is
it's,
when he comes back, but we can get it, week isn't.
at least in this package for now anyway,
Yeah,
so. it's
yes,
accessible.
yes.
If as much as possible, if you're submitting questions, I would suggest if you're willing to put it in the group so that we're not all asking the same question to Simon. I think that would be helpful. We just have to be very careful that we're not starting to answer questions in that email too, because then we're advancing municipal business and outside of the meeting, and we can't do that. But we're more than able to put in
Oh,
questions, yeah.
just submit the questions and
Submit
then
the
we'll deal with
questions.
them at the next meeting.
Yeah, but then if you asked a question that I was about to say,
No, no, I
one, I'd be like,
agree,
yeah,
everybody.
yeah.
Yeah.
Just makes everybody's life easier.
Yes.
Just so we all have the,
Yeah.
Yeah.
what if I say I don't like your question?
You gotta save that for the meeting. Yeah. All right, we are, sorry, did you have something?
Yep.
Okay. There is no
Okay.
correspondence.
No,
Other business, we have PAC meeting scheduled for 2026.
Yeah, we had a question, particularly for the next few meetings, or maybe longer than that, would because Eric obviously didn't make it tonight, he had an alternate arrangement, but we were wondering, because other committees of council do start at 5 PM and this one starts later at 6. Would people be amenable to an earlier start time of 5 PM?
I'm fine with it, but
I can't answer that right now because I do have employment that I have to figure out if I can do that.
Okay.
But it would be,
Say
it would stay,
advancing.
it would stay till Tuesdays as well?
Yeah, just an hour earlier.
So the first Tuesday, then.
Yeah.
And it's only when we have meetings. We
Right.
will have all the few meetings because we're doing the official plan right now.
Mhm.
And then the zoning, but once those are done, then we'll just be back in when there's applications.
is it fair to say we will consider before next meeting and maybe have just a loop back? And
5:30 would be better than 5 for me, because I have that travel time from North Bay as well, but I can look into it to see how flexible I am, but. Right now, I'm just looking at the calendar because I don't want to miss the JL Richards present meeting. You mentioned first week of March. Okay, as long as it doesn't get pushed back, because the following week I'm not here.
are you somewhere warm?
Yeah.
We'll come to you.
Go the week before.
Yeah.
Oh, it's locked in. I can't.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a
Okay,
yeah.
so
Yeah.
we'll have that. If you
Yes,
can
like,
It's
put that back
Yeah.
on the agenda again for next meeting, we'll figure out.
Five o'clock?
Yeah, we'll talk about it next, yeah, whatever, talk about it the next meeting and if we're gonna.
yeah, it's not.
Let us know.
I'm willing to do it, I just don't wanna commit to it if I can.
No, no, of course, yeah, just
And it's so fast here, this one's.
okay, I believe.
As long as, then I know, well,
We'll be outdoors earlier.
So I'm not gonna do the motion on the proposed meeting dates. Or am I? Should we do it? We can amend the time, that the PAC confirms receipt of the proposed meeting dates for 2026 and agrees the meeting shall be commenced at.
Yeah,
That's
so just
one.
another point, on the schedule I had, which I didn't bring a copy of, basically is that we don't do PAC meetings in January or July, but it's every other month if there's an agenda item. So usually there is, we didn't have any in the fall in there, but we had that big stuff in.
Yeah. Okay,
So you could just take out the starting at.
Okay.
And then it stays on the first Tuesday of every month.
Okay, so I'll need a mover and a seconder for that. Wednesday. Langwa. That the planning advisory committee confirms receipt of the proposed meeting dates for 2026. On the dates as shown, unless it is confirmed ahead of time that the scheduled meeting shall not be taking place. All in favor? Oh, sorry, yeah.
for certain sales. Applications, because I didn't know if there's a time frame, like for
40
once the
days.
agenda goes out,
Okay.
though. That if we amend something, is there even a time frame? Just out of curiosity, if we have to amend the time or date, like for a
Meeting up,
seven.
like you're talking about the,
Yeah.
yeah, the request that we got.
Yeah, is there a time frame?
I believe it's 24 hours.
Yeah,
Oh, just only 24 hours, okay, I just,
no, that's good.
because I didn't.
Okay. Everyone's favorite, I'll look for a mover and a seconder.
All in favor?
Moved by member Guanxi, seconded by member Paquette, that the meeting be adjourned at 9:09 p.m.
Are we good with,
All
are we
in
within the time now?
Favor, yeah, all in favor? Yeah, okay. Meeting adjourned, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening.